Oh, 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 how to torture one's elder sister. Hello, everyone. How are we doing? Yeah, it's me. It's Sunday. We have a live today. We do not have a brew ships today. We have. Well, I have been planning a brew ships, which was going to be entitled "Ships and Books for for the Canada trip," but instead we got a tie, and so we have the third patron video of the month. Always fun when this happens, because usually disappointment people go, but I was expecting Bruce. But no. Nice way. You all managed to arrange for a freeway tie. A freeway tie for first. And this is what happens. There's a tie. If there's two win, then those are the two which get. It's the two which get the most votes. If three get the same amount of votes, or there is a joint second, then I have to. Then I do three, because otherwise it's me being not fair. So we have got a third vote, and I have managed to wind my sister up by doing a bad parody of an Elvis song. Hello, Kalma Gasberg. Hello, Peter Dawson. Hello, Rick Basava. Hello, John Shea. Hello, HMS Verdun. Hello, Sage. Hello, DG40. Hello, Seneca Nero. Hello, everyone. Hello, Bob Fry. Hello, Stephen Richards. Hello, Ian Stradling, Bud Guy 229, Seneca Nero, Felix B, and Kalma Gasberg. I'm a tad low on volume. Okay, I do not understand how I'm quiet on volume. I'm quiet. I shouldn't. You see, I don't understand where this is coming from, because I've got I've got all this up, and I'm talking away, and the bar is reaching the same level it's always reached. So I have no idea why I'm low on volume. Volume's fine, Yickers. Hello. Okay. This is a strange thing, because I'm getting this product video, and everything I've tested with it has worked on one of the Long Patrol videos. But for some reason, some of the volumes are not coming out right. I have no idea why. No idea why. A little better now. Well, I'll just do that to the maximum and see what happens. And we'll see if that's loud enough. Because I have no idea why it shouldn't be. It's the bar below me is reaching the same point of the volume range. You can hear me just fine. John Shea, you can hear you just fine. You're confusing me. Yeah. Torpedoes was a bit muffled too. I have no idea what's going on, but oh well. Right. So today's topic, survey ships. Survey ships. Right then. Over here of HMS Enderman, losing a fight to a largest US privateer schooner. Sounds crazy. There are some interesting fights, and there are some very interesting schooners. Have you tried out any of your new toys? Yes, I actually have been trying out some of my new toys. This went to the wedding with me. And yes, I have been trying out. I've also been doing some testing on various systems to do live broadcasts over my phone when I'm moving around. As you know, I did used to always use my phone for broadcasts, and then I upgraded to using the computer and doing it this way. But yeah, I have a plan, and I'm announcing a long patrol, and that comes out tomorrow, and I'll announce it in this video as well. The plan is going to be that we will be hopefully doing, from some points along the way, lives from the ships. Yeah. they will be interesting timings, so I cannot post their timings really in advance. It's going to depend on whether we've got the signal, whether we've got the capabilities, but basically this is what will be done. So I have this system set up as so. I will be very careful and take phone out of its case, which always worries me whenever I do that because they are pretty darn protective. And we will use this aforementioned case. Maybe it's spun around with either Dan or someone else reading the questions out, but we'll be using that with its feet when I get the feet out. Got feet. And we'll be conducting lives and chats from wherever we are. Now, hopefully you'll enjoy all that. And hopefully, he says, it works. But I've been testing the various systems. I've got Streamlabs loaded on here, and I've also got YouTube. And so that will be, hopefully will work, and hopefully you'll get some joint lives from me and Drac from some of the ships. He says, hopefully. And before you ask, yes, that is a little battery supply, and yes, it does connect into this this tool, which when I set it up, plugs in that. That goes to there, into this, and then if we connect the two up, we should get camera time. Yay. Always useful. And I can then power it using the supply cables, which can make for an interesting time. And it's got the cable which goes to there, and that plugs into this system. Although I will probably also be using the radio mic, if we can get it, which I've got set up and got ready to go. So there you go. If you see me this out with us in Canada, it could well mean we are doing live broadcasts to chat to the whole world. Me and Drac, which will be fun. It will be. Right, let's get back to the questions. Volume fine according to Yickers, thank you. Much about it, I agree. He seems to be the same size, Bob Fry, thank you. Genuinely, a little bit better now. John Shea, I can hear you just fine, Doctor. You're confusing me. Okay. I'm not sure. I'm wondering whether there's something going on and something reacting not well with something else. I don't know. Yickers, they may need to check the volume. Torps was fine as well on mobile, no issues. Well, this is the thing. It was fine for me, but if it's problematic for enough people, there's an issue. I'm sure. Anyway, live friendships will be very cool. I know we are trying that. It's going to be good if it works. It's going to be incredibly cool, and me and Drac are going to have a lot of fun doing it. And the reason it's going on my channel, I think, is two reasons. One, my channel is more used to having random stuff put on it, so we can do around because it's still not quite in the same. Let's put it this way: my channel, because it hasn't been as round as long as Drax hasn't got into as firm a pattern as his has, and if you start mucking around with the pattern, you can cause issues. So it's kind of sensible it goes out on mine. But it's going to be fun. Hmm. Age of Verdun. Can't patron out of Fears Silver, but wanted to support the Brew Fund. Thank you. Oh, interesting. Thank you. And um, I should point out there's a little known historical quirk about conservative governments, which was pointed out to a friend of mine. Historically, conservative governments have a habit of announcing they're going to purge the civil service, attempting to purge the civil service, and ending up employing more people in the civil service, including quite a large number of those people they fire will get employed back on various other means. So, yeah, that's the joy of history. Ingenious Iron. I so thought you were talking about yourself as a war. You decided to take a Warhammer, you know, a Warhammer Legion as your name there. But okay, Ingenious Iron. Do you think they'll ever see, will ever see a cruise missile torpedo hybrid fired from aircraft, ships, and coastal batteries to attack subships and support foundations of vital structures? There have been various works working on that. We haven't yet got to the point where it's actually been implemented, but it hasn't yet been advantageous enough. And the trouble is, its main advantage is to attack submarines, and if you don't know where those submarines are at long range, you can't do it. Now, there is if you start to integrate some wider sensor networks and you get a better picture of the hydrography of the world's oceans, maybe you can start to do that. But baklava. Hmm. Let's see. The question is, uh, best ship designed and built by Sir William Henry White by Stephen Richards. Um, he built roughly 43 battleships, 26 armored cruisers, 102 protected cruisers, 74 unarmored warships, for a total of 245 ships, plus various liners. Honestly, I'm gonna say the Royal Sovereign class mainly because I like them the best. But of the Royal Sovereign class, I have a specific one which I think. Well, that no. Hmm. Hmm. You see. Hmm. Royal Sovereign class. You see, it's a debate for me between the Royal Sovereign class and HMS Renown. I think his most impressive class, and it's most important because the way it does bring about a bit of a revolution and does bring in the age of the pre-dreadnought, is the Royal Sovereigns. But my favorite of those ships is HMS Renown, which is possibly arguably the least powerful, but it's also in many ways the coolest. So yeah, I'm going to go for individual ship Renown for class Royal Sovereigns. And I know that's a big ship, and I'm the little ship guy, but yeah. Joys of our Canada trip. As you can see, Drac and the rest of the team arrived from UK now on the 3rd. And this is our rough schedule. So it should be good. And these are the rough days, therefore, where you can look at and think there might be a live at some point today, during the day, from one of those ships. Sure, mate. It's like that one episode for Yes Minister where they do an economy drive, but they realise why all things were set up the way they were. Yeah, this does usually happen quite a lot. Derek asking, got to love the YouTube algorithm. Put in a video that's radically different from the standard videos of your channel, and recommendations go bonkers. It does cause fun. This is one of the reasons why I have to say I do play things up, and I do the scenarios I do where I do the sci-fi ones, because then I bump into the sci-fi sections as well, and I always find that fun, and I find that quite enjoyable from another perspective, because it basically causes various people to find me who otherwise wouldn't find naval history, and I like them to find naval history. Okay, I will just quickly claim. Oh yeah. Okay. I might have started something because I might have brought a tweet to Drax's attention. So if Drax gets involved in a Twitter fight in the next 2 hours, that's probably on me. Okay. Engaging strategy. On the subject of Iron survey ships, have you noted HMS Echo going into mothballs recently? Yes. I'm not pleased about it. I don't think it's sensible. Iron brew. Iron brew. I'm doing a lot of recording. We have been confirmed as being allowed on the Sullivans. We have to do a little bit more sorting out with them. The one which I have the most questions and marks about is actually Obdua at the end, because as much as I love her, and I'm hoping to go on her, there keeps being communications issues. But we'll hopefully sort out all that. We'll hopefully sort out all that. That might be. I would say that's probably on my fault, because I'm not sure if I was communicating with the right people at the beginning. So that's probably on me, but we're sorting it out. Anyway, so survey ships, and let's start survey ships properly. So we've dealt with some questions at the beginning. Hallos. So let's start talking about the starting of hydrography and survey. This is one of those areas which is kind of an interesting one. Hydrography and surveying starts out early, but it takes a long time to get specialist ships. It doesn't need them. But you also have to start making the case for their value, and this is something which I make over and over again. It's one of the reasons why engaging strategy, I sort of answered your question on HMS Echo, but I sort of also soft-palmed it off because I'm going to be getting into quite a lot of detail. What does the survey ships do? Well, this is what comes off the Royal Navy's own website. The economy of the United Kingdom relies on the oceans. By conducting detailed oceanographic surveys, the Royal Navy helps the routes of global maritime trade keep routes of global maritime trade open for business. Let me give you some figures. 90% by monetary value, 95% by volume of all British trade goes by sea. 90% by value, 95% by volume goes by sea. We are up there with economies such as Japan. And also some very export-heavy economies who are dependent upon exporting goods, i.e. China, in terms of dependence upon maritime sea lines of communication. The Royal Navy's hydrographic ships carry out detailed surveys of the ocean floor and use the data they collect to update worldwide navigational charts. Now, the current ships we use have crews attachment ranging from 72 to 78. Now, what that crew actually translates is to a free watch system, with roughly 75 days on station and 30 followed by 30 days off. So usually you have 2/3 of the crew actually on a ship, the two other watches on a ship, to provide overlap, provide continuation, but also to, what are needed for manning. So, for example, HMS Scott requires 54 people, Echo Enterprise roughly 48. The charts are used by commercial vessels and Royal Navy ships alike in order to navigate the world's ocean safely and efficiently. Especially this goes for submarines. Hydrographic survey ships work in a variety of sea areas to gather and process hydrographic and oceanographic data, such as the sea depth, wave height, and barometric pressure. The Royal Navy uses the information for planning and operational purposes. Yep. Data is also dispatched to the UK Hydrographic Office for analysis and inclusion into navigation charts and other navigational safety publications. And here is the example: HMS Scott, the only ship of her class and largest survey vessel in Western Europe. It's deployed at sea for up to 300 days a year. She carries the high-resolution multi-beam sonar system, which is capable of surveying 150 square kilometers of ocean every hour. And in the previous defense review, where honestly no one thought that major competition was going to come to the noisy, very treacherous seafloor of the Atlantic, someone had the bright idea of Scott would be retired in 2022 and Echo would go into long stage reserve / whatever. As it is, someone does seem to have woken up, smelled the caffeine, and gone, you know what, actually, this might not be a good idea. And Scott has been reprieved till 2023, but we need a replacement for it. So, what is your opinion that the dumbest question someone asked you in a live of this channel? I cannot remember. I honestly don't remember any dumb questions, really. There are sometimes questions which in the moment I'm sitting there going, where's that one come from? I often do think that. Where's that question come from? But I've been lucky. I haven't really had any dumb questions. Dick Richards. What about British expedition to Antarctic ice wall in 1846? Those were expeditionary ships, not survey ships. Okay, this is the thing. You sometimes convert ships for expeditions, in which case they'll do survey work. But they're not survey ships. They're expeditionary ships. There's a difference. Now, can people give us hints for us to those allergic to Twitter? Basically, I would describe it as, I feel, looking at the account, I'd be tempted to think as troll. Is trying to cause trouble over the sinking of the Bismarck, and they've managed to end up attracting the ire of Drakenfell. Hi, Glenn. Russia has the free M54 caliber expert, Club N. Look at the wiki page. Yeah, I think we're talking about the various options for using a torpedo-based cruise missile. Okay, look, it's useful. It is there. There are a few nations which have worked on it, but honestly, when you start looking at numbers, it's not really been developed. Not for anti-submarine purposes, and not for maybe for land attack, but not really much land attack purposes. Mostly it's for anti-ship purposes, and the idea was it would get in under the close-in weapon system. But then you realise there's been countermeasures around for torpedoes for a long time. And you still need to get the missile into there. And that's the thing, it's carrying a big heavy weight, and it's a lot of engine, and a little bit more engine, a little bit more fuel, and you could use that weight for a big warhead, which will hit the ship. Stuart, where does RS David Attenborough sit in terms of survey? Well, it's a, for starters, it's a Royal Society, Royal Science, a Royal Society ship, and it's pretty much, it's quite survey capable, but it's more of an ocean. It's more part of the British Antarctic operations and the civilian side. It doesn't really do the surveying and hydrography as the Navy does. River 7. I read Dr. Clarke that the Royal Navy shared their charts with the rest of the world. Yep, they do. And they charge them for it. Can't remember the time frame, but does it make sense to do so, with Britain being a maritime trading nation? Believe it or not, that's going to be one of the stats I'm going to be talking about when they started and why they started doing it and why it's useful. So, yeah, but it does make money for them. Seaman Richards, who cruise these ships? They're Royal Navy crew. They are Royal Navy personnel. As Engaging Strategy points out, though, and I'll be getting into, some of their survey data gathered by the RN is indeed fed into charts by UK Hydrography Office and sold commercially, which generates income and actually to an extent funds the service. Some of it remains classified for various reasons, and the RN crew survey ships, but always carry a small cadre of civilian specialists as well. Yeah, it's basically like when you're doing OPVs and you're doing duties that way. You carry some things. Sir David Attenborough is Boaty McBoatyface. Yes, that's that ship. Yes, again, engaging. It's why they have civilian style enclosed lifeboats, same as the RFA, because they carry civilians all the time. So, this is usually the slide where I have the most fun with people. How you conducted surveys. This is pre-1940. They were dropping a lead line. Actually, this is terribly scaled. Because it doesn't even give you that much data. It gives you literally the data, which is the size of a lead line. Now, this lovely cut, which I grabbed, this bit on the end, is roughly the size of a lead line. Here's the problem. I lower it into the water until it doesn't lower anymore. It might hit a point of balance like that. It might hit a point of balance like that. It doesn't really matter in the age of sail for the accuracy of what I'm doing because I'm not going down there. It works. It's accurate to the nearest foot. It might even balance perfectly like that. But there might be a whole thing down here and it won't tell, or down here and it won't tell because it doesn't go down. Then they develop single beam sonar. Now here's the thing. They use the 1940s, 1980s, but what do you have in the 1940s going around? A lot of sonar-equipped ASW ships, which are coming out of service. They're no longer in use. The Royal Navy doesn't need them for war operations anymore, but they want to keep hold of them because they're worried about the Soviet Union. And they haven't got the next generation of escorts in service yet, which means you need a lot of the previous generation to be able to do the job. So they start them off doing surveying. And they're good at it. But it's, how do I put this politely? If this is the wide beam going along, then the multi-beam sort of wide beam scenario going along is like the phone going along. Then the single beam is kind of like this, the pen, which is fun. That's your issue. That's how much you see. So basically, if you can imagine, to get an accurate picture, that is what you have to do. And you miss still huge chunks. So the level of data we're now getting from survey ships, it has dramatically increased. And its value, therefore, has dramatically increased. And its importance to our life has dramatically increased. Key example I give to people is, I gave you some stats at the beginning. 90% of trade by value, 95% by volume goes by sea. 99% of all data that goes between Europe and the UK and the rest of the world goes by sea. People look at me and go, no, we have satellites. We don't. No. Undersea cables carry huge, infinitely more data than satellites do. Satellites do carry a lot of crucial data and are critical for getting information from, especially from difficult to get places around the world. However, especially the latest generation of fiber optic cables have revolutionized data movement around the world, and they are it. They are where it's happening. They are critical for your information. So the sea is important in terms of the movement of goods, but also massively important in terms of movement of data. And this is where this comes in, because plotting out the best route for cables is really, really important, because cables are very fragile. Let's be honest, it helps also with submarines, but cables are incredibly fragile. And they are national strategic assets. This is one of the duties which the survey survey ships are used for, is checking if someone's been mucking around with cables, because they have the scanning ability to scan and check it. They're an important part of what we call grey wall capabilities. Lead line, a line with a lead weight to make it sink. Yep. That is pre-1940s technology. Pull trigger. 99% seems low. 99.99999 seems more likely. There is also some stuff which is transmitted by overland wires and cables and all sorts of things, and there's the debate about the lines going through the Channel Tunnel, whether we count those as going under sea, whether those are sea lines or whether those are special. So we roughly, let's just go 99%. It's far easier than me getting into the whole argument of the last 1%. It makes my point well enough without me getting into that argument. Engaged often had a bit of soft wax on them, so when you pulled it up, you could tell the seabed type as well. Yep. Lynn Stewart. Fragile, expensive, and even a tiny shortcut can save so much money. Yep. Anything which saves sea time and cable length is useful. Manny would they not be international strategic assets? That presupposes that all international actors are going to treat them as the same value and give them the same respect. Lines going through the channel are subsea lines. You and I might say that, but believe it or not, there are people who will spend a long time trying to disagree with me on that one, and frankly, I don't have the time or inclination to argue them when I'm off to Canada. There is things I have time and inclination for at the moment, and there are things I don't, and one of them is that. Yes, we have arbitrary training being mentioned, so let me just sort of go into this bit a little bit. Because arbitrary training often arbitrage training often comes up as sort of how do I put it? Well, it's one of those training areas which basically has to be done so fast it requires computers. And it's the simultaneous purchase and sale of the same asset in different markets in order to profit from the very tiny difference in the asset's listed price. Basically, it's making huge profits from very short lived variations. And microseconds are enough to make it work. That's it, basically. It's exploiting the mechanism which is there to ensure that prices do not need to deviate substantially from fair value for long periods of time. So, whilst it's difficult to profit from it, if you've got fast enough computers and fast enough data, and as some people point out, there can really be literally of billions in transit in these cables at any one time, you can make a lot of money. Felix B, how far can you measure the lead line? How long is your rope? I could have gone with how long is a piece of string, but literally it is how long is your rope. And actually, some of the ships which were doing survey work were literally just given lots and lots more rope storage, so it could carry a lot more rope, and occasionally windlass systems to help them get it in. Marcus Osmason, hello. Shockingly, the waxy lead usually recovered broken shell. No idea why. 20 pound of lead smacking the ground would always recover broken shell rather than nice whole ones. Yeah, we'll leave that to one side. People who will spend a long time arguing that lines that quite literally run on the sea are not sea lines. Okay, let me explain why the channel causes debate. And I will give you not my view, because my view is it's under the sea, so it's under the sea. But I've honestly had this argument with fellow academics, so I will put it out there. Lord help me. So, the argument goes this. The channel is a land-to-land connector. It doesn't come from the sea, and it's designed to go between 2 points of land. Whilst it does travel on the sea, it never goes near the sea. It's always in the rock. Therefore, it is dry land the whole way. The cable put through it is not a subsea cable style system. It's what we would normally use in installation how we'd install cables on land. So therefore, it has not been installed as a subsea cable. It's not run along the ocean floor. It is run along through a tunnel, as if it were a tunnel in anywhere else on land, running through the tunnels in the London Overground. Is a good example people often bring up to me. So therefore, it is not a subsea not a subsea cable, because it's not a sea cable. It's a land cable put through a tunnel which happens to be under the sea. Please do not try arguing back at me, because you're basically arguing to convert it, because I'm the one who argues that is an absolutely total argument. But that is my life. That is what being an academic is about, sometimes having arguments over pointlessly small things. And Darashatsky has just put it in as well. Richards, I got the rest of my books back last week. Room full of book boxes. Yay! That sounds fun. Tim Richards, what's the deepest part of the ocean can these cables be put in? Well, that's the thing. Theoretically, they can go very, very deep. The actual exact figures of how deep they can go are not really publicly listed. But let's put it this way. They go deep enough. Some of them are put deep enough down in the ocean that they are. How do I put this politely? That the only way you're going to get to them is not with a human diver. Danhrim, this arbitrary business sounds a lot like the practice idea about communicating via monarchical inheritance by torturing a minor, communicating via monarchical inheritance by torturing a minor noble. That doesn't sound that bad. And Paul from Chicago, crazy at the Challenger found the Challenger deep. What are the odds that one should find the deepest part of the ocean? It's spent a ton of time at sea, but nevertheless, it is complete and utter random luck and fortune. And you consider that by, as I've talked about when I did the video about the Challenger Deep, how long it took for them to find the second deepest part of the ocean. There is literally exchange that routes incoming trades through two boxes through with 61 kilometers of fiber optic cable to delay the incoming trades. Yep. And there is literally programs and systems to try and stop that causing a problem and to try and get around that. I suppose knowing where your enemy is likely laying their sea lines and communication so that you can go chomp, chomp, chomp on them and zoom them their mail also helps. Yeah. Greg Sassy, are cables running in the underground under the Thames underwater cables? Oh, God. I'm not getting into this. Don't get me involved in it. Okay, this is causing. I knew I should not have brought up the channel tunnel. I should not have. Why? Why would I bring up the channel tunnel? Why? Why would I bring this to myself? Why? Oh, good. B1900 pilot, please be sensible. GPS revolutionized holographic survey work. Hence the reason use of radio transmitters were no longer required for the level of accuracy that GPS provides. We use a helicopter setup emitters. Oh. Chicago, second deepest. Tonga Trench, fan 952. Dr. Clarke is correct, as usual. It's disturbing. Yeah, but I did, that's the sort of thing. That it took us so long to find it. Thank you for, I remember that because of the amount of times I've taught the Challenger expedition. It's a fun thing to look at. And so also, you have the different have to differentiate the actual submarine cables across the channel from the dry ones in the tunnel. Listen, I'll give you another headache on the channel. As someone who left the UK before it was built, I forgot it existed. Right then, so here's a chronology, and I got this from my usual online source when I go and grab stuff quickly. It's called it's Naval History Net, and it's the Hydrographic Survey. And the reason I go to that site is because it's really, really good, and I always recommend people go and start off with it. And they have a good chronology, so I could have written my own, or I could use this one and use that time to go, other time saved to go and prep other stuff, which is what I did. 1801, first Admiralty chart published. This one just goes round to the Navy. 1807, Naval Chart Committee came into being. Prior to 1801, there had been Royal Navy charts. There had been British charts, and trust me, the French really, really did want them. But they weren't Admiralty charts. They were produced under the auspices of various admirals, local squadrons, and there were some things called court charts as well at one point, which are a bit weird. I think that, well, as I've always understood them, they're called court charts, but I was recently informed by someone when I was researching for this, no, that's not their name, they're called this. And I went, well, this also, they're called a court chart, and that's a contemporary source. Yes, but that person was wrong, and I'm going, you're arguing with them that they're wrong. That person was quite literally Secretary of the Navy at that point, and there was a whole debate. So I will say this: I call them court charts. One of the former secretaries of the Navy from the 1700s called them court charts, but there is a debate as to whether or not they're named court charts. So that could be wrong information I'm giving you, or I could be giving you a name which only a very few people called it. So I just am putting that out there. In 1819, the Admiralty took over the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, and permission was given to sell Admiralty charts to the merchant marine. Please note this is after, of course, the Napoleonic Wars are over. 1823, first sailing directions published by the hydrographer. 1829, first light list published by the hydrographer. Light list, of course, publications of where there are lighthouses. 1832, promulgation of information to keep charts up to date, began in the Nautical Magazine. 1833, first tide tables published by the hydrographer. 1834, first notice to mariners issued by the hydrographer. 1842, Admiralty Compass Department set up by Rear Admiral Sir Francis Beaufort, who was, of course, the hydrographer for 26 years, and gave his name to the scale used for wind and weather, the Beaufort scale. 1902, International Council for the Exploration of the Sea established in Copenhagen. 1919, World's first International Hydrographic Conference. 1921, International Hydrographic Bureau established in Monaco. Still there. 1922, first Admiralty list of wireless stations published. Yes, those were radio repeating stations that you could call from your ship to pass on news. 1967, International. Go back a second. 1967. International Hydrographic Bureau is renamed the International Hydrographic Organization. 1968, automatic data processing equipment, computing as first introduced into Her Majesty's service ships. 1971 to 80, International Decade of Ocean Exploration. And 1978, a Royal Navy Hydrographic Department received the Queen's Award for Export Achievement because their quality of their products was considered to be a great boon to British national prestige. That's what I said. The enemy always wants your sea chart to know the shallow, dangerous areas useful in time of war. You want the enemy's chart for the exact same reason. Actually, no. The French wanted the British charts because the British charts were better for telling them about their own coast than the French ones were. The French actually decided that the British were obsessed with hydrographical science. Hello, David Redden. John Shank, just because why not? I define underwater cables as if it goes undersea, any large body of water, either underground or under the water or in the water, it is an underwater cable. It's an issue. I would agree, broadly speaking, with you. 1940. So the International Decade of Ocean Exploration didn't find a Titanic, but some dude out to check up on a sunk nuclear sub did a couple of years later. Yep. Just remember, when things are named the day of something, or the decade or something, or the week or month or something, that's usually a political decision, not an actual reality. Enjoy, Glenn. Good luck with the writing. The fact that you call the charts by a term used in the 1700s lends weight to the notion you and Drac have cracked time travel. Not quite yet. It's more a fact of we actually go and read primary sources. But other people read other primary sources and have debates. So it's fun. Engagement. I'm just going to throw this out there, but I'm going to be a sad sandcastle if Dr. Clarke doesn't mention continuous Q route survey and the role of the mine hunters. You want to get into the Q route survey? Can I get a decent map? Not in here because honestly, yeah. Did I have a map? Oh. Can I get a decent map for it? No, nope. I'm going to be mentioning it, but I was mentioning it when I got to Echo, Scott, and that sort of thing. And if by then I manage to find a decent map, I will use it. Chris, running under the sea doesn't equal a submarine cable. The former is a description, the latter is a technical term with a standard definition, laid in water in the seabed. That's why I tend to describe it as undersea cables, which I was talking about, which is what it is from a strategic perspective and security perspective. And the data is still passing under the sea. But yeah. That's true. How fast do we have to get HMCS Hideout cycling the sun to time travel out of Star Trek? Well, I know Jack Ray says warp factor 10, but I think you I think you can possibly do it. It's a tribal, so you can possibly do it at warp 12 a little bit faster than that. So if I get caught tapping an underwater cable, can I say I was just conducting an investigation related to hydrographic survey? Nope. Right, so I have open next to me my list of survey ships, which is, I have to admit, is kind of an interesting thing to sort of start off with, looking at survey, having a list of survey ships and going, what's a survey ship versus what isn't a survey ship and what they get up to. And yeah, you're going to be having fun in this one. There is going to be debates. What source of information did you use for this subject? Okay. So, my starting point was, honestly, I went to the Royal Navy's Oceanographic Survey site because that's what I always use the basis for much of my information. But once I did that, I then went through the various. The other starting point was the link I should have below, which is where I got this chronology from, which should be there. If it isn't, I'll add it in. It seems to have disappeared. Anyway, there is that's an online version. I have a couple of books, which honestly I won't recommend to people because they are academic books, and even I find them a pain to read. But they are it's very good. And yeah, that's the starting point. There is some decent books out there as well. If I can get a picture of it. Because the trouble is, for my book, yeah. Right. So, the two books that you'll find out there which are quite good, if you can get copies of them. Charts and Surveys in Peace and War, The History of the Royal Navy's Hydrographic Service, 1919 to 1970, by Roger Morris. Published, I think that was published in... That was published a while back. 1995. And yeah. I can only get used copies, I have to admit, available at the moment. Of that, and my copy is, sadly, as said, not with me at the moment. Mainly because it's online. Which is why I don't have a photo, but I'm currently trying to valiantly nick a photo from Amazon, he says. And the other one is The Admiralty's Chart, British Naval Hydrography in the 19th Century, by by Rear Admiral G.S. Ritchie, DSE, which is the best part of 70 quid. And those are the two which are most like English in terms of their linguistics. But the other ones are far worse. So you've got Admiralty Chart, British Naval Hydrography in the 19th Century. And as the other one, as said, you've got is Charts and Surveys in Peace and War, History of the Royal Navy's Hydrographic Service, 1919 to 1970. They're both good books, but, you know, they're pretty darn expensive. Well, one of them's very expensive. It's 60 quid. I think the version I've got was about that as well. Hello, thanks. Okay. Remember that the French use British maps of their coast because they're better than the Frenchmen. This does not help the French reputation for ineptitude. It's one of those scenarios that the French could quite literally put it down to the fact that the British were basically taking anything they could off the French coast. It's more a suggestion of the British control the sea. The British have managed to master control the sea on the Channel, especially and off France by blockade so well that they were the ones able to chart the French coast, not the French Navy. Richard, okay, I finally got a good one. Does the Iron handle the bed surveys for rivers and inland lakes as well? It depends. We have HMS Magpie, which will go quite far out inshore, but she'll go as far as she can go up a river. They will do it, but beyond that, they usually let the Hydrographic Office manage it, and they have their own civilian gear. Some launches they use. Thanks. I know this is it's quite unrelated to the topic, but I want to ask: is there any particular book about British paper ships for the interwar period? Not really at the moment, but me and Drac keep talking about writing one. That's on our list of potential projects for us to do together. Do a joint book on. We're going to have this talk probably while we're in Canada. Shall we have a go at doing it? Paper ships of the 1920s and 30s. Or paper ships of. No, I'm almost tempted to say paper ships of the first half of the 20th century. Hi, Diana and Carol. Don't worry, we've only got as far as HMS Merlin, so you've not missed that much. You missed the introduction topic. Now, why is Merlin here? Well, Merlin is the first ever survey ship for the Royal Navy. And why do I call her a survey ship? Well, she's actually launched in 1666. She is best known as the cause of the Third Anglo-Dutch War, because in 1671, Lord Ardington ordered Merlin to carry the English ambassador's wife, Dorothy Osborne, past Dutch ships anchored near Brill. Now, you have to remember, there's a treaty which says that the Dutch ships have to strike their flag to a British warship and fire white smoke, which is as a courtesy to warships. You strike your flag to British diplomatic ships, bearing the mail, etc., but you do not fire your guns. However, here is the problem. And Van Gelt, the Dutch commander, does say that he's doubtful as to whether Merlin came into the category, as she's so small, he's not sure she's a warship, and he doesn't want to set a precedent. And you always have to remember, with international maritime law 90% of it isn't written yet, and 90% of what is written is precedent, not treaty. So it's basically history, and we're acting as if the history continues on, and that's enforced by us saying it is, not by any actual codification or law or consequence. But leaving that to one side, that was used to manufacture the reasons and pretexts for the Third Anglo-Dutch War. Most people did see through it as shameless. But because she was carrying 8 guns and was 109 tons burthen and was so small, that's why they hadn't saluted her properly. Anyway, war happens. That goes on till 1674, and that's fine. But between 1681 and 1693, Merlin is employed by Captain Grenville Collins, a really important Royal Navy officer and one of the first great hydrographers of the UK, to complete the survey of the British coastline, published in 1693, as the Great Britain's coasting pilot. So it spent 12 years as a survey ship. Not exploration, surveying. Didn't go exploring out the world and see the world, it was surveying the coast. Now, I would like to point out that his actual survey includes, and that's published by Freeman Collins and sold by Richard Mount of London, is also partially based on Dutch maps and replicates some of their errors, which suggests he hasn't. However, the overwhelming amount of data in there was good, and quite a large chunk of it was new, which does allow Collins to rank us not only with the earliest hydrographers, but also with some of the best of the British, and I would say some of the best in the world at that time, hydrographers. But yeah, this ship had been used to cause a war because it was so small, and then yeah, and that of course is the Medway raid, which she was completed after, or just before. Yeah, just before. Hi, Dan Carl. I think I said that. No, necessarily. Like, I've only seen those valves on some rescue service vessels designed for, say, servicing North Sea oil platforms. Hmm. Jack, right. Can someone get a hole in one in golf if the hole were not whole? Is there a hole or a half not? Please don't get into golf debates. Please don't. You're just scaring me. Definitely, RN ship for most of the 17th, 19th century is one that goes around saying to foreign ships, "Hello, would you like to join the RN?" You would consider yourself a prize. Not quite. There were actual ships doing survey work, but most of those ships, like Merlin, were warships converted to the role, and they were going around dropping that lead line. And dropping those lead lines is one of the reasons why there was such a belief that all the ocean's floor were covered in shells, broken shells. Metroids, paper ships of the first half of the 20th century. We were going to start off with the paper ships of the Royal Navy from 1900 to 1950 is what I'm suggesting, something like that as the subtitle. Work out what the proper title, and then do the other navies. Jack Wright, English ships surveying the coast of other places like someone casing the joint before the robbery. Well, we don't like to point this out. H7. Sorry, combining messages together. Are these surveys and navigation charting as part of Peep's reforms of navigation? Yes, Peep certainly was pushing for it, and Peeps was pretty pretty crucial to it getting funding and get it actually happening. Because Peeps was fed up with ships running onto rocks which weren't supposed to be there, so he wanted some accurate maps. Yacht Ragnar, Ragnar, and look at it, bow. Okay. Oh my. Why do you need an Arctic Explorer as a personal yacht? Oh, it was converted from a commercial vessel. Okay, it is a conversion, so perhaps that makes sense. Converted from a commercial vessel, Ragnar's Explorer is unlike anything else. Well, it is, yes. It was a multi-purpose support ship vessel for the fossil fuel industry prior to that, so that explains the bow, etc. But does anyone mind if I have this ship? Because I think I could survive with that library. Oh, that would be a nice room. Oh, I could have that as my bedroom. Yeah, I think I found the houseboat I want to live on. If anyone feels like buying it for me. Oh, it's got a gym. I could use that. I need to do some exercise. So it's got its own bar. Okay, comfortable. Chessboard. It's perfect for me. I think that board's also... I don't think that table's quite big enough for a nice Warhammer set, but I'm sure I could find space for one. Ah, suit of armor. Well, that's something to entertain Drac when he comes round for dinner in the dining room. Oh, those are nice, comfortable seats. Yeah, if anyone wants to buy me the Ragnar, I will quite happily take it. I won't object to it at all. Right. Hi, Nook. Darren, you might think of that, but of course I couldn't possibly comment. Mm-hmm. There, Richards. Hey, Doc, have you ever done a course on how to use the old navigation tools, old cartography charts, and how to read them, move by them? I think that'd be amazing to learn. I actually have, and I've been taught how to navigate. I've done a lot of navigation training in my life. I'm not the best. There are a fair number of people who are better than me, but I certainly have learned the skills and had to. I've had a lot of training on that in my life on navigation, using modern techniques and old techniques and charting to an extent. If I was going to do a video like that, I wouldn't want to do it as a video in an office speaking like that. I'd like to do it on video on a boat. So I'd have to see about a friend of mine if they could help out. Because if they turn up with their boat, then I could probably do it quite well because I could have them take the lead and I could ask them questions. Sonic Canary, please increase your volume. I've got everything at maximum. I've got everything at maximum as far as I can tell. Let's check. Raise Siren Elite. Yeah, I've got everything at maximum, so I'm honestly not sure why anything is saying it's not there. I don't know. I watched a video on the Portuguese answer to the English East Indian Company, a compare and contrast between Portuguese, Dutch, and British East Indian Company, and a role of spices in maritime history would be enlightening. Could be fun. Do I need to lobby you or Drac? Probably me at the moment, because Drac's got tons of stuff. I thought your houseboat needed to look like a tribal. I could magnify that shit to look like a tribal. Trust me. I could get some twin 4.7s on the front. That houseboat has had a hull rated to break 80 centimeters of first year Baltic ice and 30 to 70 centimeter of first year polar ice. I know! Just think of all the fun I could have with that. My copy of A Sailor's Odyssey arrived from U.S. Naval Institute Press Friday. I think non-fiction should be worth the price you have to pay for it, but there's a fine line between good value and a doorstop. It's not that big. Let me see my copy of the new version. It's somewhere around here. Staring at me, I was using it earlier. It's in the pile of books, isn't it, behind me? Yeah. It's not that big. It's big, but it's not that big. Where is it? That's the thing. It's small enough. I've managed to lose it in my pile of books. See? Not that big. There you go. That's not that massive. Come on. And it smells so good. Mine's still got a faint whiff of new book smell. Mainly because I keep using the old one. But it's a good book. It is a good book. But I should stop using the old one because that would save the old one by using that one. Right, and HMS Hecate. Right, and Hecate is a 4-gun Hydra class paddle sloop. Launched in 1839 from Chatham Dockyard, as many ships we'll be discussing will be. She cost the princely sum of £27,742, which in the 1830s is a lot of money. In January 1856, she sank the American brigantine Chatsworth, which was engaged in the slave trade. And this was while she was on duty with the West African Squadron. However, she ran aground at Lagos later after about a month after dealing with the brigantine, and she returned to the UK to be fitted out for survey operations. She signed the Pacific Station in 1860 and surveyed the British Columbia coast. She found the Hecate Strait between British Columbia mainland and the islands of Haida Gwaii, And arriving at Australia Station 1863, she undertook survey work in Botany Bay, Moreton Bay, Brisbane Bay, and Torres Strait. And in fact, some of her data was still the best data we had available when they began operations in World War II. Yeah, this is the trouble. You never have enough survey ships. J-Mac, maybe it's time to dust off the sea kayak. Yeah, I need to get down to Cornwall. I need to do some proper kayaking. John Quigley, does he? A bit off topic. Have you heard of Matthew St. Leonard? He and General Mitch Ryan have produced a series of books using sci-fi to explain strategy, like you and the crew were talking about on Dodge Pumps. Yes, I have, but I haven't really used his books, I have to admit, because I. Yeah. Okay, I switched speakers. Now it's fine. So it wasn't me. Thank you. Thank you for telling me that. Christopher, solution to the quiet Dr. Clarke issue. Get one of the Google Chrome volume booster instruments. This is the problem. I'm not unsure. I do not know why I'm quiet, because it always used to be people saying how loud I was. So unless YouTube is changing the sound, I haven't changed anything on this end to try and make myself quieter. In fact, it's as loud as it can be. So I do not know what's happening. Hello, Brandon Larson. Oh, it's so helpful for Lloyds to rate the hull for icebreaking. What do you want to bet they've rated conservatively and she can break thick ice? You never know your luck, but I do remember my dad, when he did work for a few years as a Lloyd's surveyor, would say it's always better to build in a margin of error for these things, just in case structurally they don't hold her quite up. And age. It's better for the insurers if she's rated a bit lower. So if you take her in slightly harder and something happens, it's on you, not her. You've invalidated the insurance. But no, and I think having an icebreaker rated ship for my personal houseboat would be wonderful. I could sail. You could imagine what I could do. That ship could be rated as a tug as well. Imagine what I could do with her. Sank the American brigantine. Why would they not take her as a prize? If you took them as a prize, that could cause issues. If you sank them in the process of carrying out slave trade, it was, how do I put this, almost politically easier to deal with a sunk ship than a prize ship. Because a sunk ship prize ship goes to a prize court. And they have to then emit things. Whereas a sunk ship, well, that's just got sunk. Very interesting. I was somewhat surprised when Sam Willis's fighting ships came from Amazon a few years ago. Still don't have a shelf big enough. Yeah, this is why I've custom built my own bookshelves, just so I have enough bookshelf space. Jack Rank, I wonder if there is an old freshener scent called Old Books. Send a bit to Dr. Clarke for his car and stuff when he can't be around his old books. New books, old books. I love books. I tend to have enough books in my car that I get the smell anyway. This is HMS Challenger, not the one, of course, that found the Challenger deep. This is a ship named for her, actually built in 1931. And she's a survey ship. She's a specialist-built survey ship in the 1930s. You can imagine what she spends World War II mostly doing. Yeah, your volume is just fine, and thankfully you're not clipping. Then, I believe Scotty said that a good engineer is always a wee bit conservative, at least on paper. It does help. Brad Larson, have you seen the Top Gun Maverick yet? And if so, did you enjoy it? No, I haven't seen it. Actually, it's one of the things which me and Drac are considering doing while we're in Canada. going to see Top Gun in the cinemas out there. Mainly so we can see if the American version is different from if the American and Canadian version is different from the British version. I imagine she wouldn't have to be made to look like a troll when you hide her under the we hide her on the side. That would be an advantage of her. But who says I'd stop with Hyder? Because with a ship with that tugging ability, I could go for, I don't know, Belfast. Hello, have you met my 6-inch guns? Or I could go even bigger. Yeah, I could go even bigger. Yeah. She does look a little like a flower class. You are right. She does look a little interesting out as an HMS Challenger. So let me give you her stats. She weighs in at 1,140 tons. She may have used a commercially available hull design. She may have been sent to do a survey of the Mariana Trench and to check Challenger Deep. And after World War II, prior to World War II, well, let's see. She surveys the waters of UK, Labrador, West Indies, and East Indies. She struck a rock actually in 1932, and that was refloated. In 1940-1942, she served in the home waters as a convoy escort, including taking part in the convoy with the troopship Amsterdam, which was sunk en route for Freetown, Sierra Leone. 1942 to 46, she surveyed the Indian Ocean and Western Pacific. She returned to Chatham in 46, had a refit, and then returned to the Persian Gulf. She went to Cyprus, where where a shore party logged tides. She took part in operations all around the world. She circumnavigated the world from 1950 to 53. She spent 3 years going around the world, surveying the West Indies and the Far East. And she only returns to the UK in 1954. It looks to me like you don't actually have enough bookshelves. When I get next set of shelves built beneath the railway, and get the shelves built on there, basically I've got to take a week off, and it's what this summer's going to have. Last summer was dealing with all sorts of weird stuff. This summer, once I get back from Canada, I've got a week where I basically scheduled nothing but YouTube stuff. So the days when I'm not doing YouTube, I can set up a big sort of tent structure in the garden, a gazebo with sides basically, and yeah, put the stuff in, take the camp stuff from my office to there, and then use that to build up to use the time to rebuild this, make it look sort of finish the construction. Brian Larson, thank you. Have you here? And you've been a member for 7 months. Thank you. IMAX. There's a British version of Top Gun. Not quite. Mitch, why do I get the feeling that if Drac and Dr. Clarke ever visit the US, we might end up missing one or more battleships? There is one which I feel should be possibly taken off its current curator, but I'll leave that to one side. Richards, what does the standard refit include? Everything. It is pretty much a total overhaul, as you would understand in car terms. Imagine a standard refit. Imagine a combination between It's basically, imagine a sort of a refit of a ship. Imagine it's a 20-year MOT service of a car, which has reached a 28-year point. Scaled up for something of the complexity of a ship, but also including repainting, upgrading any bits which need to be upgraded and renewed. It's basically it's pretty much a rebuild in all but name. Hmm. As I see, so was it? Let's take this commercial hull and see how it works on survey ship. Okay, so it's correct. We have a new corvette. Let's put it this way. Officially, and I will tell you this, the Flower class Corvette starts in 1938. They start looking for it in the stack design, etc. And in 1939, well, but in sort of June, June 1939, they placed the orders for the Flower class. But as I've said for a long time, the British have a small ship program working. They're working out what the armament they need for these anti-submarine warfare ship vessels on the sloops, and they're building them. But they use warship style hulls. But they use vessels like Challenger here, survey ships, etc. A couple of interesting ships ordered to test out merchant style hulls. Almost as if I can't think who is in charge of the Royal Navy's starting to get influence over the Royal Navy is the coming the coming third Sea Lord at this point. But of course, the first Sea Lord at this time in 1931 controlled the Royal Navy. Yeah, a very interesting and very, of course, important post. In 1931 is a gentleman called Vice Admiral Roger Backhouse. Now, Backhouse is a critical officer who goes on to become Admiral of the Fleet and First Sea Lord. Unfortunately, as First Sea Lord, he is succeeded by Admiral Sir Dudley Pound. The reason is he has failing health, rather like another Third Sea Lord at the time. It's one of those things. Quite a lot of the Royal Navy's senior officers all become rather ill 1938, 1939. He died apparently from a brain tumor in July 1939. Backhouse did. But yeah, the Royal Navy was lucky. They had a good couple of a good run of Third Sea Lords. They also had Charles Forbes, who was definitely no dummy. He was allowed to retire in 1943, though, mainly because he spent most of his time arguing with some of the senior command. But Forbes was the guy who initiated the Saint Nazaire raid. Anyway, HMS Protector. Now, meet our first Arctic survey ship. Although she doesn't, of course, start life that. She starts life having the role, and this was an important one, of being a net layer. MOT and service. And the thing is, yes, an MOT is an inspection, but if you fail the inspection, you have to get those parts fixed and repaired. So that's what I was using it as. Because, yeah, the MOT is not like the MOT is an inspection, but you fail it, your car's not going out to the road. So basically, MOT is this is what's wrong with your car. This is what we need to fix to pass it. Yes, done. Thanks, Doc. If you were asked to pick up to 20 World War II vessels, regardless of the ship type, and put them together as strike force, which ones would you choose and why? it would depend on what the operation was, what my likely opponent is, and what I'm likely to actually have to do. If let's put it this way, carrier wise, well, we'll have put out just protector because I haven't done much of a history yet. I'm probably going to go for an implacable carrier wise because that's got quite a lot of aircraft, but also and quite good for World War II aircraft, but also more importantly is quite armored, and so no matter what the operation, that's fairly decent for me. Iowas are about the fastest and most capable of the surface combat, large surface combatants. So I'd probably want at least, if I've got 20 ships, I'll take 3 each of those. I'd want 6 decent cruisers, and the rest would be fast destroyers, and I'd probably pick battle class destroyers because I like the battles. And the cruisers, well, I'm not going to go for an 8-inch cruiser. I want to go for a good all-round cruiser. I don't really need to worry about an 8-inch cruiser. I've got 3 Iowas and 3 implacables, so I need a decent air defense cruiser. I don't like Didos, so I'll go for Atlantas. Hope that answered the questions on that one. Let's see. Yep, Protector, the first Arctic patrol vessel. She served 1955 to 68. She is a net layer built by Yarrows. And, well, she could carry 2 Westland Whirlwind helicopters after a conversion to a Arctic patrol vessel. Interesting. Just for anyone who might be confused, when the movie was made, the Spanish were still flying ME-109s and HE-111s. Fun times. However, it's not directly related to the topic, but given your adulation for Henderson, who were his World War I and World War II equivalents, and how do they influence the RN? Apologies if you laid it out while I'm typing. World War I equivalent, the guy who gets everything ready for World War I, it's a guy called Jellicoe. And of course, he then goes on to command the fleet. Kind of a rule, a strange, interesting rule that Third Sea Lords end up sometimes doing quite well when they're commanding the fleet they build, because they're the ones who realise what they're building and why they're building it for. Some do, some don't. The World War II, who takes over after him, is a guy called Fraser. Takes over after Henderson. Then after Henderson, after Fraser, it's a listing of others. And Fraser really jumps in and just basically is a person almost in the spot, helping Goodall get through what Henderson had already put forward. He does a bit of work himself and some ideas, but mostly it's a case of I haven't got time to think up new stuff. I've got to organise the building of the current stuff. Most influential survey ship and what did it do? Given the ability of satellites to map, do we still need them? Trouble is, satellites are not that great at mapping what's beneath the surfaces. So satellites are good, and people like to go, oh, ground penetrating radar and all this stuff, but then they start to realize that actually the oceans are a lot deeper. A lot deeper. And ground penetrating radar and all those satellites, it's very, very deep to get accurate readings. And there's a lot of diffraction and water in it. Let's put it this way. The hydrophonic ships do a better job and give us far more accurate data. They also provide us with data about the layers and the inclines in the ship. And again, if the reason you can tell that GPR is not going to satellite-based radar is not going to be sort of converting these things at the moment is that people still going on submarines are brilliant and able to pass on the sea undetected. If satellites could be used to map the surface of the oceans, then the same trouble which is affecting the surface ships and people going, surface ships are going to have their days on because of satellites, would be affecting submarines. Because believe it or not, anionic tiles are not stealth material, they are sound material, not for radar. Most influential survey ship, what did it do? Well, Challenger is probably, but Challenger's an expedition ship. Survey ship. I'm going to go back to the first one I talked about because she's the one who sets the process. If it wasn't for HMS Merlin, that's a lot of the processes used for survey ships wouldn't be in place. Remember, are Atlanta light cruisers the ultimate scout cruiser or destroyers of a roid rage? They're enough of a combination. I'm quite happy with them. And who says they have to be one or the other? Why can't they be a combination of all three? I have heard some talk of satellites being able to track submarines of clear weather. Well, this actually is pertinent topic, so I'll explain it. Right, so when people talk about satellites tracking submarines, they're actually not quite getting it right. So, sometimes we claim we can track satellites in shallow water using submarines in shallow water with clear satellites because we can see them in the water, which is true. You have been able to see them, especially in the Mediterranean, sometimes if they're shallow enough. However, now we have ocean satellites up which are monitoring the movements of the oceans. They monitor the way the currents go, and they're constantly monitoring, and especially the data that comes from basically the cloud data gathering systems, all the sensor buoys and other systems put in the oceans to study the ocean movement. Right. So the idea goes this: if you build up an accurate enough, and I mean this, an accurate enough model of the oceans and how they behave, you can therefore use that accurate model to test against what the oceans are actually doing. If the oceans are not behaving in the way you think the model says they should be behaving, remember it has to be accurate enough. We're not there yet. Then that tells you there's something different going on. Now, that difference could be a wreck. It could be an anomaly like a piece of rock in the water you didn't realize was there, which is why you're doing a hydrographic survey. Or it could be a submarine. You have enough data, you can minimize, you can you can draw down the anomalies. Okay, yes, not all those anomalies are going to be submarines, but the thing is, if you're able to spot those anomalies from far enough away, i.e. satellites information, then that makes your job of hunting submarines that much easier. However, that also makes satellites that much more important a target to frag at the beginning of any war, because satellites will be the most likely thing you can take that will cause trouble for your submarines. Now, you might go, well, we'll replace the satellites with high-flying drones. Cool, you can do that. But the whole thing is, if you're doing an ocean survey, actually the satellites and the wide area data is quite useful for that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves. But basically, you turn ASW from finding a needle in a haystack to we're going to survey these 4 glasses, and in one of them, something could lurk, or all of them, something could lurk. We don't know until we go and check them. Speaking of refits, currently doing that with our 20-year-old diesel garden tractor, soaking its seized up injection pump in cleaners this week. Fun times. Downham, jumping ahead a wee bit. Survey ships, although not really ships that were impressive, were the beach reconnaissance teams in mini-subs for amphibious assaults in World War II. There were a lot of beach reconnaissance assets involved in World War II, and they worked again in the Falklands War. Would a submarine or long endurance UUV make a good survey ship? The trouble is, if it's a submarine, it's going to be revealing its position because it's going to be transmitting its data all the time. And that's one of the reasons why you must use a surface ship. You also have the problems that if you're transmitting from inside the water, it can affect your reverberations and the information you have coming back. But your computer gear can deal with that, and you can work it out. So, yes and no. There are advantages to submarines, and I do see UUVs being used in conjunction with survey ships. I think, in my ideal, a future survey ship would probably have 4 or so USVs, which get dropped off, probably a suite of UAVs, and probably some UUVs, all as part of its survey processing, as well as its own hull-mounted sensors, and would be doing a massive amount of sensor data gathering. I bet the first SSNs did a great deal of survey work on the Arctic Coast. Maybe still doing it. Nope. If you remember, if you're going on the survey, if you're going on the Arctic ice, if you use your sonar, you are going to reveal your position. So that's why going under the ice is quite so dangerous. That's also why you have the British Antarctic and Arctic Survey. You have the Arctic survey teams and all those scientists going out there doing ice measurements. There are other ways to get your data. I'll do the general questions at the end. We should get to them at some point. My understanding was it doesn't need to be an anomaly reference to an accurate enough model, merely a suspiciously mobile anomaly. Well, yes and no. You can do that. If the suspiciously mobile anomaly, of course, yes, you can go with. But that's if the anomaly is moving fast enough. At what point do you consider fast enough? One of the problems is now orcas can move at 56 kilometers an hour. There are various other animals, but if we could put 56 kilometers an hour, that's 30 knots. So if you've got a pod of orcas moving along at 30 knots, and you don't have enough data to be able to tell what a pod of orcas looks like going through the water, you can end up bombing a lot of orcas. And there are a lot of orcas in the water. So this is your problem. This is why you have to have enough data, because one of those things, there was a point at which someone was going, well, it's only if they're moving fast enough. Well, once you started realizing there are these quite big, someone started thinking, going, well, there are some quite big objects which move themselves through water which are not submarines. Oh. So we better have accurate data for them. And then there is the fact that submarines like to loiter in places. And what happens if the submarine is loitering below a surface ship? Can you tell the difference between a surface ship moving along and its effect on the area and what might be beneath it? So it's a case of you want an accurate enough model. We are not, I don't think we are that far away, but we are not within jumping distance. We're not a year away, we're a decade away, because it's processing power, but it's also data that's going to allow us to make such a model. Mm-hmm. But then USS Nautilus could have used her sonar for survey with very little detection. But the trouble is, ice also changes. Emmerich, is a theory that you could track a submarine's weight with sensitive enough radar, and the aforementioned detailed model and a lot of computer numbers crunching. Theoretically. Then hide your SSBN under a pot of orcas. Mm-hmm. Now, HMS Vidal is a cool little ship. And she is a cool little ship. She is the last ship built at Chatham Dockyard, last surface ship, I think. And she's a first small ship designed to carry a helicopter. She cost 1.345 million, which does sound always like you're making it up, but is the actual figure 1.345 million. I also went, why couldn't she be 1.2345 million? But no, 1.345 million. She's named after the joyous Alexander Thomas Eric Emmerich Vidal. Thankfully and hopefully she'll be the last to carry that name. But she is important because she was one of the ships sent out to survey Rockall. And if you don't know where Rockall is this little island in the middle of North Atlantic, which is sort of disputed between Ireland and the UK. But in reality, this is going to sound terrible. It's in the UK's exclusive economic zone, and the British put a plaque there first. And we've been claiming it for a lot longer than Ireland's even noticed it existed. So, sorry, Ireland, you're not getting it. But the thing is, where it's located could be financially very lucrative. But more importantly, the reason the British went for it in this period is because there is a naval missile testing site at Ust, and they were worried that the Russians might occupy the island and claim it, because technically no one claimed it when they went for it in 1955, and so they claimed it to basically stop the Russians claiming it and trying to watch them and turn it into a North Atlantic version of what we see going on in the South China Sea. Anyone would think there's no new ideas, that it's been around for a while. Yes, you have niche cases where it won't be perfect, but neither is passive sound. Niche cases do not include orcas. I'm sorry, Melanie. I agree there are many good reasons for it, but it's not yet at the point where it can work. There are lots of people who make the case it could work, and I do listen to those scientists and engineers, and usually they say, give me another year's funding. Give me another year's funding and I'll crack this. And I am a bit more skeptical because I've heard engineers and scientists say it's another year, or it's a year away, or 2 years away, so many times. Okay, I think it's about a decade away. And the orcas are not a small problem. The orcas are one example of things which are moving at high speeds underwater and can look like submarines on the current sensor data. So we need to be careful because, and here is the other problem, and I say this with a lot of love in my heart for the British Armed Force and various armed forces in the world. We do not have the supplies of weapons to be sinking orcas. This is my big problem. Okay? Not only should we not be doing it, we shouldn't be, it's not a good idea, but we also will run out of torpedoes very darn quickly. We don't have the supplies, we don't have the industrial capacity to replace them by sinking orcas in a conflict, especially if we are early on. So we have to be careful. Get there, but we won't get there now. Yes, you have niche cases where it won't work perfect, but neither is passive sonar. You don't get 100% perfect, but you get from ocean to investigate these 42 areas with Poseidon. Yes, I did, but you haven't got to that point. It's not 42 areas of Poseidon. It's not that point yet on the data. This is, yes, I did read it, but it's currently at. If I talk about the version which is not secret, but was not the secret, was an academic test project. It was something like it gave you 1,500 targets in the North Sea alone, and it's a case of 1,500 is as good as I don't know infinitive. It just isn't at the point yet that it can refine targets down. Richards, if they have quantum computers that can operate interdimensionally, they can track a submarine. Just my opinion. We're not going to. Doesn't require quite quantum computing, but it's getting there. Land Freeman, I now have visions of one of the RN's V-boats sitting under a pod of orcas, occasionally making whale song noise and possibly even being adopted by the pod as one drone. Don't joke. Don't joke. There are some very interesting SSBN calendars captains out there. There are some really interesting people. There's data I didn't have. Yeah, that's the that's the problem. People tell the thing, and then you sit there and watch the thing go 1.5 hours. How many? To the point. Here is the actual reaction I said to him. How many P8s do you think the Royal Navy, the Fleet, the Royal Air Force is going to have? No. Well, we think this one, with it producing roughly 1,500 targets in any 24-hour period, we think we will need to increase the fleet to somewhere in the region of 100 aircraft to be able to service them. And that's in the North Sea, not the North Atlantic, not the Atlantic, not the Arctic, just the North Sea. And I was looking at that very earnest engineering academic and went, I will look forward to this when it produces something more. And I realize there's probably a more discreet version out there which can produce a smaller figure, probably. But I think if that's the version the academics are sharing around and showing, I don't think that's going to work that much. And if anyone wants to know where that research is being done, go. There are some very interesting universities which you can find their websites. But I can't advertise. I'm not going to advertise any of them because I don't work for those unis yet. If I did, I'd be quite happy to sing their praises. Yes, I'm monetizing YouTube by going, universities, if you want me to sing your praises, make sure you employ me. Sean Curley, if we could somehow get the enemy to bomb orcas, maybe they would come in our side. I don't think wish wars to be waged on the orcas. And this is the HMS Enterprise, which was originally called Starship because of the Enterprise on Star Trek. But my complaint is this particular model vessel never appears on the Enterprise wall of ships that have borne this name. No. Let me see what it does. The RAF operate 100 of any type of aircraft. There is a debate on Eurofighter numbers, but I don't think they actually operate them. I think they may own 100 airframes, but I don't think they operate them. They have a lot of gliders. Probably they could claim to operate them. Christopher, better we hit a couple of pods of orcas with nuclear ASROCs than let a Russian sub get away to launch. No, it isn't. And especially not nuclear ASROCs, because then, by the way, you'll be eating radioactive fish for the rest of your life and you'll end up with all sorts of weird problems. So please, can we do a lot of work before we reach the nuclear ASROCs? I mean, can we do a lot of work? I prefer not to use them. I'd prefer to use the conventional ASROCs and hit the right target. As for the SSBN, you're thinking that if they're out anywhere near where there are pods of orcas, I'll be surprised. In fact, if they go anywhere further than the White Sea, I'll be surprised. Basically, they'll be in one of the bastions. A Sea of Murmansk, that sort of probable area. Maybe a bit under the Arctic. But they'll be close and well within protective range. But of course, there is the fact that if you consider the Northern Fleet has theoretically 8 SSBNs, of which there's ever a maximum. The maximum is ever one. It seems to be out at sea, sometimes two of their SSBNs. So it's one part of the Russian nuclear triad, and it doesn't appear to be that heavily operated or exercised. In fact, it's one of the things to watch for them escalating is if they actually deploy the things to sea. There is, of course, the possibility that they actually don't go to sea. That they are the only the ones that I'll see are the only ones which can actually go to sea, and the rest are just paper hulls. But we'll find out. Aren't the enemy bombing the orcas? Aren't the Norwegians and Japanese hunting orcas? I think it's just the Japanese now, and even think they don't like to hunt orcas. Orcas tend to hunt them back. There are whales you can hunt with relative impunity. There are whales who will hunt you back. Orcas are one of them. Extra venom would be nice if there was enough defense funding for 100 sea patrol planes. At that point, there are probably enough escorts, carriers, landing ships, logistics that Navy is having a party. If there's enough funding for that, there's a lot of things I'd fund before the 100 sea patrol planes. Although I would probably increase the sea patrol planes to about 24. Nuclear airlock was a thing in real life because homing torpedoes were not particularly reliable. Yep. Especially when you could launch a missile. Definitely. It's changed. It's a lot better now. It's a lot better now. Correct. I'm surprised that's not the Enterprise of the Mongolian fleet. No, this was the Enterprise. It was a good little ship. It shows. From my time in US submarines, sometimes the best means of locating a sub was to look at a particular location where there was an absence of sound. Something blocking out background noise. Yep. As I would describe it with dogs. Sometimes your best way of the first thing an owner will realize when there's a problem is when there is silence. Because when they're asleep, they make snuffling noises. And you hear that. When they're with you, they're cuddling quietly in your arms. That's fine. When they're playing in front of you or playing with a ball or squeaking around, that's fine. You know what they're doing. But when you hear silence, you hear your puppy making no noise. That is when you know there is trouble afoot. HMS Enterprise was a pretty cool little ship. Yes, I do realize you're all going to call it a boat. But she's an Echo class from 1959. She'd served to 85. And she's a sort of East Coast English Channel hydrography. She went up to Cologne on the Rhine. She went to the North Sea coast. She visited Belgium and Netherlands. She had a lovely time, but she is only 122 tons in standard. That's 163 tons full. So she's not exactly a big ship. And yeah, the case for nuclear ASROC has been pretty much eliminated. Engaging heavy repair ships chilling in the background. That it was. So HMS Endurance, and again, another survey ship which caused a war. This time, it's arguable. I don't think so myself. I think it's more syntactic, but it is. It does show the value of presence. Basically, presence is something that's hard to quantify the value of when you have it. but you can soon detect when you don't have it and what happens cause its absence. In the case of Endurance, when she was withdrawn from service, well, they were announced they were going to withdraw her from service. That was, how put it, it confirmed the already present Argentinian inclination amongst the junta that Britain didn't give a flying hoot about the Falkland Islands. And look, what's the carrier behind them? The carrier behind the previous vessel, the Enterprise, was one of the repair and maintenance carriers. I forget which one. I did look it up earlier, but I've forgotten. Mm-hmm. So, Endurance is a good ship. She started off life as the Anita Dan of the Danish a civilian ship. And she sold to the Royal Navy in 1967. So she's built in 50. It was built on well, she's launched and commissioned in 1966 for the Danish, and then she sold to the Royal Navy. Her nicknames are HMS Encumbrance and the Red Plum. Obvious, really. 3,658 tons in displacement. She was armed with two Oricon 20mm cannon. She could carry two Western Wasp helicopters, which she carried till 1987. Then in 1982, she also carried a Westland Wessex helicopter. And from 1987 to 1991, she carried two Westland Lynx. This was after a 1987 refit. Good times when we had a helicopter available. Helicopters were really useful. Oh. She's, of course, named after Ernest Shackleton's ship, Endurance, which took part in the 1914 Antarctic expedition. It's a good ship. Before anyone gets in it, for boomers, most of them, if you launch surface, the damage done to the decks will be interesting, and their ability to actually submerge will probably be compromised. Remember, these ships are designed to have water between them and the rockets when the rockets go off. And a lot of water. Now, interesting enough, during her time service, she took part in some very interesting operations, especially during the Falklands War. She was part of the retaking of South Georgia, and yes, had that will join. She also joined the UK Main Task Force at various points and was doing some very interesting work with them. And after the surrender of the Falkland Islands, Endurance, along with the Yarmouth and RFA Almeida and the tug Salvatierman, also went and retook the South Sandwich Islands. Basically, the Argentinians ashore were going, we're going to hold up. HMS Yarmouth, a very nice little frigate. Yarmouth is a Type 12 frigate, which is quite a lovely little ship. She took part in the Cod War, but she does carry two, one twin forward 4.5-inch Mark 6 gun. And yeah, basically, she turned up and went boom, 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 and they went, we surrender. Because there are only 10 of us, and that's two big 4.5-inch guns, and we don't know how many shells you have. Um, just checking here because last I heard, I'm presuming. Yes. Okay, so Mick Schumacher, not Michael Schumacher, and it's the son of the guy who I actually know about. Yeah, just checking. Sorry, Night 681 joined the chat and went evening doc, and F1 is done for the weekend. Schumacher had a binned it in the barrier. And I was sort of going, I didn't realise Michael Schumacher was back racing, but of course it's his son. Okay. Dan Freeman, do we have some West Scotch egg islands or Eastern sausage roll peninsula? No, we just only have the South Sandwich Islands because, well, Lord Sandwich, who was very poor as a lord, and he used to bring his lunch to work with him in between two slices of bread, which is how the sandwich got created. To fill him up for the day, so he had lunch. He brought a packed lunch. That was how he ran the Admiralty. No one mentions how big a dinners he had when he got home. I think myself it was quite a good trick of his because it basically because he's always having his own lunch. It stops people ever accusing him of profiteering from his post. Hello, Danny Wright. It shows the problem with an SSBN able to submerge after the surface launch would have more to do with ballasting, with each one of those SSBN weighs several tons of. It's no, there would be a lot of damage done to the hull. If, as said, if they managed to actually get the missile to fire, as Melanie 1640 points out, missile wouldn't detect the conditions necessary for it to light the rocket, and if it could, it would destroy the sub. Yeah. Hi, Danny Wright. Carmen, hello, Carl. Got to see HMS Pembroke yesterday. Cool. And yeah, they have methods of ballasting without having those SSBMs in there. All right, a question about the Spanish Alfonso class light cruisers. They carried twin 6-inch guns and shield mounts, not turrets. I can't think of any other cruisers on that way. Were there disadvantages? There were lots of disadvantages. I'll quickly get a question on this one. Otherwise known as the Almirante Server class, the Alfonso class. Well, how do I put this politely? It saves weight, and it is basically the same idea as you had with the Royal Navy and their destroyers, in that they didn't put in instead of putting in a very light turret, which they thought would just turn the shrapnel when it was hit and kill the crew inside, they could put in a stronger shield that'll be pointing towards the enemy you're firing at. But it's kind of an interesting thing because they are 595 tons standard and 9,385 tons fully loaded, so they could have been heavier. I'll be back in a second. I just heard a noise outside, and that might be food arriving because I'm supposed to be getting dinner brought to me. Woo-hoo. Hello. the lid in. Nope, not food. It was an idiot sister trying to move a heavy pot and hurt her back. Oh, I love my sister. I love my family. I remind myself I love my sister and I love my family. And if I say it enough times, I remember it. And HMS Beagle. I like Beagle. I think they're cute. Now, Beagle, of course, is also involved. And this is one of those things. When I'm asked by people, they go, oh, so what does Beagle get up to? Well, Beagle had a ship's company of 45 Royal Navy personnel and was classed as a warship under the White Ensign. She had a good galley and all sorts of things. Now, this class was she was part of the last class to have wooden over steel decks. Originally, her and her sisters were designed to work in pairs, but from the early 1980s, Beagle generally worked alone around the UK shores, progressing the areas not covered by side-scan sonars. Following a half-life refit in 1990, Beagle was fitted with the most modern surveying information processing system ever designed. And she also tended to work with various accoutrements added on. She carried at one point a 31-foot survey launch called Fitzroy, and had the original 18-foot survey launch replaced with a Sea Raider rib, and associated davits. So, you know, that's useful. All sorts of systems they carried on them. It's quite funny when you look at the ships and how they did. Of the 4 ships that are sold in the class, Fox was sold in 1989, Fawn was sold in 1991, Bulldog in 2001, and Beagle was sold in 2002. She was affiliated with Devon Town of Newton Abbot. And yeah, she's refitted into a 4-deck luxury yacht renamed HMY Titan. And that's able to suite 22 guests and accommodate 20 crew. From 2019, she was rechristened Aqua Blue and does voyages in Indonesia and the surrounding waters. So if you want to go aboard the old HMS Beagle, she is now Aqua Blue, and you can find her in Indonesia. Hello, Shimmy. Christopher, I'd thought some first-gen Sirencers had launched from the surface. Perhaps in misremembering things in first gens. No, that's first generation. That's a long time ago. I was asking, aren't modern SSBN supposed to do a cold start, launching the missile several meters up before the engine starts? There's a difference between trying to launch it underwater and launching it from the surface. You can launch it so it's a couple meters away from the ship before the rocket goes off underwater, but that's requires a whole different ball game to launching something the size and weight of a ballistic missile on the surface. Okay, there is not the comforting medium of water to assist you. No, it was the other class which are used as hospital ships. Yeah, Herald, the Heckler class were used as hospital ships during the Falklands War. Danny, I'm not getting involved in Sendai class. That would just distract the whole evening, mainly for me. Yeah, as many 6040s point out, the systems are designed to eject a missile from the tube when submerged at a very specific depth. You might notice the density of air is different from water. It is different, and it does affect these things. They have very fast-acting ballast pumps which are capable of onboarding sufficient balance so they hold depth even whilst launching. Yes, that does help. I usually Melanie Sinkivordi is always pretty a good source for information on missile tech. He always makes it interesting in the chats when talking about missiles, and she's in the chat. Right, HMS Herald. Now, this class were the Hercules class ocean survey ships, and they served in the Falklands War, the Gulf War. Honestly, the Heralds are replaced along with other ships by Echo and Enterprise. The amount of ships replaced by Echo and Enterprise is quite disturbing. And she actually ends up going and serving in the Irish Navy as a hydrographic vessel named the Somerville after Admiral James Somerville, and then went to India to be broken up in 2004. It was Herald, along with Hydra, Fawn, and Fox, that carried out survey operations off the coast of Iran in 1979. And she was diverted to pick up 60 British and American dependents from the port of Bandar Abbas during the Iranian Revolution. So she had that little career. During the Falklands War, she served as a Red Cross ship, ferrying casualties from San Carlos to Montevideo. And during 1983, she served the South Atlantic Guard ship. During the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, she was deployed to the Eastern Mediterranean as support for the mine hunters of the 3rd Mine Countermeasure Squadron. And she then served that squadron when it went to the Gulf, and was still in installation when the Gulf Air War campaign began in 1981, relieved by Heckler in about February. In 1998, she located the wreck of HMS Russell off Malta. Russell was, of course, a Duncan-class pre-dreadnought, which was sort of quite good and quite capable of 19 knots. So an interesting ship when you consider most dreadnoughts that are pre-dreadnoughts were capable of 18 knots. Being able to go 19 knots was a bit of an interesting one. And in December 2000, she answered a Mayday call and took part in a joint operation of the Royal Air Force to rescue the crew of the Cypriot ferry Royal Prince. But the crew were rescued by a helicopter and from RAF Equatori and were dropped off on the Herald because, of course, the helicopter didn't actually have the ability to carry them that far. Without running out of fuel. Speaking of rain, I think I'm going to get a rain-delayed dinner, judging by this. Actually, oh yes, my washing isn't up on it, so thank you, sis. Mm-hmm. Must have taken it down for me. Peer launch, anti-reader. It's nice to know if one can launch or not, even if there is no SSBN in case of nuclear war. So you test. Think so. Oh, that's the source of Alzaski's. Think sub brief mentioned that the Russian subs can launch from Pier. I mean, they can't be that stupid to damage the southern process. I would say there are some things you worry about the claims of. Nice hearing. Why were only 2 Echo class multi-role survey ships built, and why is the Enterprise survey ship after a light cruiser went to the scrappers? Well, to be fair, don't take this the wrong way, but previous to Enterprise, there was this Enterprise. So let's be honest, as a drop down from a light cruiser, that's the bigger drop to, well, Echo to the level. we'll get into the Echo Clarke multi-role server ships, but honestly, here is the point I have to make about the Echoes. So, Echo and Enterprise enter service in 2003. They replace in service Herald, which goes out of service in 2001. They replace Beagle, Bulldog. Arguably, they replaced Roebuck as well, but she does cover them in service, so they replace those 3 ships. And yeah, there is the fact that actually before that, if you consider that Thorn Fox had also been in service as well, the Royal Navy had at one point in the sort of the late 1980s has 4 oceanic survey ships in service, 5 coastal survey ships in service, and an Arctic patrol ship, which is 10 ships. They currently have 1 oceanic survey vessel in service, 2 coastal survey vessels in service, and an Antarctic patrol vessel, and a survey motor launch that's capable of independent transport, which is called Magpie. Yeah, that's kind of a drop down in capabilities in terms of ship numbers, because you can only be in one. A ship can only be in one place at a time. It can only be in one place. No matter how efficient you man it, no matter how much efficient and skilled your crew, you can only be in one place at a time. These vessels are not, and I repeat this kindly, they are not the TARDIS. And it is money. Camera is shaky. I have. If I hit things, maybe that shakes out. I haven't seen the camera shaking. Yeah. So, Roebuck was nominally used for surveying along the UK continental shelf, but she was enhanced to operate overseas, so she could also do not just do coastal survey, but also do some, let's say, oceanic offshore surveying. She had a full suite of hydrographic sensors, a survey motorboat for inshore work, and could also operate as a support ship for mine warfare vessels. Now, this was mentioned on the Q Patrol earlier, where basically you have mine warfare, mine vessels sort of using their sensors to go in close and find the mines, but you have an oceanic, a big hydrographic survey vessel using its larger sensors to try and find things, anomalies at a distance. Scott is especially good for this, but is rarely used for it because she's so useful for other things. So usually it's vessels like Enterprise, Echo, Roebuck. It's something which they thought they could nestle down the need for, but I think, and especially it's the processing power. As I keep trying to explain to people, having the sensors is one thing, that's great, but it's also having the processing power. And then I got told by people, well, what we do is we'll just have the data transmitted back to the UK and we'll have the processing done in the UK. And I go, that's fine, as long as you can get the data back to the UK. If not, then you've got ships up there which have no use. And that's a problem. Okay, that's a real problem, trying to get people to understand. In a peer conflict, you cannot guarantee access to satellites. In a peer conflict, you cannot guarantee access to a lot of things we take for granted. And the more you make yourself dependent on something, the more likely you are to find it taken away by your enemy. And they don't even have to destroy satellites to necessarily deny you access to them. They could do a denial of service attack on them, or something similar. Now, there are various forms of denial of service attack could take. It could be while in theatre, they could be getting bombarded with so much electromagnetic radiation that they cannot hear your signals, no matter how encrypted they are. They're just getting bombarded with too much energy. Or there could be more advanced systems used. So reducing the cost of platforms and the procurement costs of ships can be very attractive by putting the sensor the data back somewhere you can easily upgrade it back in the UK. Let's say putting it in Northwood, but that's not necessarily the most sensible thing. And you need the ship on the price. So most of these ships, by the way, the cost of a survey ship is its sensors and its computer processing power, the SIPs. Those are the things which are really expensive for them and really critical. Roebuck was a very useful ship, and yes, she's getting old. But you know, if you think about it, she's acquired by the Bangladeshi Navy in 2010. She's still in service with them. The Royal Navy set her off in 2010 without replacement, SCSR 2010, of course. And you sit there and go, well, hang on. Actually, we could have done a replacement. You could have done with 3 of the Enterprise class. And it's not as if you don't have the names, because the previous 3 Echo class had been Echo, Ageria, and Enterprise. This 2 Echo class are Echo and Enterprise. Well, we could have had Ageria again. Or you could have gone and got another E out. You could have used Emerald. You could have used any of the E names you fancied. Hi, VCH. I thought sweeping was mostly done by helicopters these days. No, that's only the US which occasionally tries to do sweeping by helicopters, and it's an interesting skill, but it's still there are still quite a lot of people who still use divers to go and check, and surface ships and uncrewed surface vessels and uncrewed underwater underwater vessels and divers. Emphasizing the divers. Mm. Mm. No, speaking of sensor processing pattern, aren't modern multi-beam sonars so much underlayer pods? No, they can be. You can get some which are pods, but some of the most powerful are not. And what do there's particular sweeping if they're sweeping for mines? That's what we're talking about. And a nice way, oceanographic survey vessels are often used to back up mine sweeping assets in their roles to provide a sort of wide area survey. Also, they provide support amphibious forces, and they also are used to make sure the routes for submarines, and in the case of Magpie, the little inshore one, making sure the routes in and out of Portsmouth, etc., are clear for the carriers to go through, and the seabeds are not stabilized in such a way as it's filled in the channels. I'm actually good to the ship. I have no idea, but I'm presuming at some point, XSplit had a problem because it's saying I've done an hour and 25 minutes on the XSplit, and yet the live streaming is telling me I've done 2 hours and nearly 30 minutes. So I'm presuming this went wrong at about an hour and 5 minutes mark. Anyway, HMS Endurance, the most recent one. Hello, Strider. VCH. USS Pueblo is still in North Korean control. Do you think it'd be worth it for a US to liberate? And are there any other navies which come with ships in similar situation? Not that many navies with other ships in similar situations. The British are still annoyed about losing their rib to the Iranians, but that's one thing. That's just a rib. Honestly, it's annoying for the Americans, but if you go in and liberate it, you're going to create a trouble in a casus belli. And I do know at one point that potentially the North Koreans offered it back to the Americans as part of diplomacy. Someone muttered about diplomacy, I think, with in the Trump era, but I think Trump wisely saw it as what it would have been, which would have been a poisoned chalice. I'm not sure if I asked, how come the wreck of the James Shanana hasn't been found? Has anyone been looking for it? That'd be the first question I'd ask you. And if anyone's looking for it, are they applying enough money to go for it? Are they taking enough systems? If they're not hunting for it, they can't find it. So, endurance. Well, you could say that the British government learned their lesson. We could always say the British government learned their lesson. And the previous endurance didn't actually go out without being lost. And this vessel had full aircraft facilities and a double hangar for 2 ice-modified links, which is really good. And I would say this is the high point of the Royal Navy's polar service because this was a Class 1 icebreaker, which enabled her to travel through ice up to 1 meter thick at 3 knots. Her propulsion system used a computer-controlled variable pitch propeller and stern and bow thrusters. Now, the trouble is, she was laid up in Portsmouth from 2009 to 2016, during which time HMS Scott pretty much covered for a role, following serious damage caused by flooding following error during, routine maintenance on a sea suction strainer. In 2013, she was planned to be scrapped. 2015, she was offered for sale. And eventually she was sent to the ship recycling facility in Turkey because pretty much, again, British governments were trying to be interesting and they were trying to go for the cheapest option. And they did go for the cheapest option, which was actually getting a new ship, which was less capable than this one. I like HMS Protector. I just would like her even more with a hangar. Having a helicopter is useful. What was offered back? What would have been a poison chalice? Vintage car history mentioned that USS Pueblo is still in North Korean control. Do you think it'd be worth it for the US to liberate it, or are there other navies captured ships? And one of the things that was one of the rumors that went around when Trump and Kim were negotiating was that Pueblo was going to be offered back. It would be so much cheaper if we replace a 35-ton thing. It always is. But it's also not necessarily more capable. And one of the troubles about survey ships is especially if you consider Arctic survey ships, is they're going to parts of the world which are quite dangerous. And again, this is the other problem with survey ships is they tend to have very valuable systems on them, sensors, etc. So actually having a crew aboard is quite useful from a security perspective. Who makes the best icebreakers? VCH. I'd tend to go Norwegian. If I would tend to go Scandinavian. If I want a good icebreaker, I go Scandinavian. But Endurance was a good ship. She was a really good ship. It was plainly useful. I don't know. Right. So this is HMS Scott. Now, HMS Scott is possibly the most useful ship you never hear of in the Royal Navy. and was actually supposed to be got rid of this year, but in February 2022, they announced that she's going to stay around until at least 2023. I hope she stays around longer, and I'm hoping the Harlan Wolf purchase of the dockyard she was built in means that there might be another vessel built to replace her. Now she was built in Appledore Shipyard. She was ordered in 1995, launched in 1996. She had a major midlife refit 2013 to 2014. So theoretically, and I say this theoretically, she should be able to carry on till about 2030. But as said, they're talking about replacing her. Now, one of the reasons why they could be replacing her is because she's had to do far more Arctic territory work than she was supposed to because of her covering for endurance. But she is an absolutely exceptionally important vessel. Now, why is she so important? Well, if we go back to the beginning, there is a quote the Royal Navy puts right and front and centre on their website. HMS Scott, the only ship of her class and largest service vessel in Western Europe, is deployed at sea for up to 300 days a year. She carries the high-resolution multi-beam sonar system, which is capable of surveying 150 square kilometers of ocean floor every hour. Now, she retains it for 300 days a year at sea because she has a crew of 78, as said. But actually, that 78 is divided into 3 watches, each roughly 26 personnel. And she only needs 2 watches aboard to operate, so she goes to sea with 54. Whenever the ship returns to port, one crew section on board is replaced by the section on shore. And then the ship deploys almost immediately. She has worked as an auxiliary in support of mine countermeasures vessels, but mostly her biggest role is in maintaining a very solid understanding of the routes to and from the deepest parts of the Atlantic Ocean for ballistic missile submarines and other submarines to transit through at high speed. If you want submarines to do high-speed maneuvers underwater, they need to have incredibly accurate maps of what they're likely to run into. That is where ships like HMS Scott come in. And she's useful. She has done many, many operations, and whilst she could be sitting next to the ice at one point using her sonar, she can be scanning out a long way. If we again go back to this diagram, there is no surprise that HMS Scott is commissioned in 1997. She's launched in 1996, ordered in 1995. She is a multi-beam sonar, and she has one of the most powerful multi-beam sonars ever fitted to a ship. She is very useful. And she's a USP, a unique capability. And I do not like the idea of her being replaced without her being left out without replacement. Yes, 300 days a year at sea, per year at sea. She regularly averages 300 days a year. VCH, survey ships. How about the Challenger Expedition 85? Do you think they were ahead of their time, simply well equipped for mission, or just lucky? A bit of all three, but as we've done the Challenger, I did a whole video on the Challenger Expedition, so I haven't touched the Challenger much at this point, other than mentioning the ship named for Challenger. And in fact, of course, the Challenger X-85 did discover the deepest. But technically, Challenger in 1875 wasn't a survey ship. She was an expedition ship, exploration ship. And she was doing survey work as part of her exploration. She wasn't doing survey work, technically, as for her purpose on it. I don't. I don't know. Why do we forget that given the Japanese could build Shinano, that they have the industry to build a supercarrier? A little bit off topic, but mostly because most of that industry is destroyed by World War II. And then they have to rebuild from the beginning. And they never build a carrier at that point since then. Although, as soon as they do start building carriers properly, you're probably going to see a lot of people thinking about that. It's going to, of course, depend on what names they give them as well. Yeah. It's interesting looking at the Japanese at the moment. They are, well, yeah. We'll see where they go from the Izumo class. I wouldn't be surprised if their successors are going to be probably bigger, and they probably are going to have successors, big ones. Wouldn't be surprised if they launch up to about the 35,000, 40,000 ton range. VCH, you are technically correct, which I've been told is the best kind of correct. No. It's just helpful sometimes. It's like I have to remind people that technically an invasion of Taiwan by the Chinese would not be an amphibious operation. It would be like the Channel crossing in D-Day. It would be a shore-to-shore maneuver rather than a ship-to-shore maneuver, because they wouldn't be basing it. They wouldn't be basing it from the sea. They'd be doing a transit operation, which is rather like a scaled-up river crossing, which operationally and technologically speaking is still complicated, but it's complicated in different ways. And the Chinese Navy have lots of experience with river crossings, and Chinese Army have lots of experience with river crossings. I don't. How many of the Scott class DDR need to meet operational needs? One. That's the crazy thing, because it could do 300 days a year. Pretty much Scott was all you needed, and you only needed one. But to be fair, when she wasn't on duty, she's covered for by Echo and Enterprise. So basically, the Royal Navy has three of them, and those aren't as good because they're orientated in a different way, but they're still pretty darn useful. Then right, how does Scott get enough time for maintenance? That's one of the reasons why she had a refit for an entire year between 2013 and 2014. But also they do a lot of refit and maintenance at sea underway, which is good from a security perspective. It's not quite Blue Gold Cruise, as Anuk and Melee 1640 are discussing. It's more a case of, so what they do is they do 75 days on, 30 days off. So they rotate in thirds. Ship goes out to sea, comes back after roughly 30 days at sea. One set of crew goes ashore, one set comes on. So let's say you've got groups 1, 2, and 3. Teams 1. One goes ashore, 3 comes on. They go out to sea for 30 days. 2 goes they come back. 2 goes ashore. 1 comes on, so now 1 and 3 are on the ship. They're going to sea for 30 days, come back. 3 goes off, 2 comes back on. And that's how they keep up the operational tempo. and they do maintenance in those sort of either at sea, in those handover periods, or as I said, they took her out for a whole year, which didn't cause fun. But Scott is a really useful bastard. Seriously, honestly, I'm going to get more annoyed and cynical the more we go through these. So we have the Echo class now. These vessels, their range of equipment includes multi-beam echo sounders, single-beam echo sounders, survey planning and processing systems, that's SIPs, side scan sonar, oceanographic probe and sensors, undulating oceanographic profile systems, Doppler current log, sub-bottom profiler, bottom sampling equipment, survey, of course, a survey motorboat. They can carry various cannon and machine guns, and that's 20mm Oricon cannon, I mean, not boom boom cannon. But they are basically do survey tasks in support of submarines, amphibious operations, minesweeping. They provide pretty much real time tailored environmental information and can have the role of embarking a dedicated mine countermeasures commander team and supporting other mine warfare vessels. And they can support divers and the range of those systems. Now, what I find annoying about them and Scott to an extent is I feel all of them could have been built with aviation facilities. They, more than just a flight deck. I think they could have had a hangar. I think it'd been useful, but it would have added crew needs and size. But I think actually having them would have been useful. These ships weighing at roughly 4,000. Well, no, 3,740 tons roughly. Scott weighs in at 13,500 tons. So they're not small ships, and let's be honest, Scott is bigger in displacement than most cruisers that served in World War II. That's a useful ship to have. Did you cover the survey ship conversion of World War I and World War II era ships? No, not in this video. Because there is a limited amount of it. I try and keep them to roughly 3 hours long, and I try and cover the ships I am covering in enough detail that's interesting. As I say, in short, it would be good to have at least one more of those. Yeah, it would have been useful to have at least 2 Scots, and it would have been useful to have at least 3 to 4 Echoes. If you could have had 2 Scots and 3 Echoes, you'd have been singing and dancing all the way to the club, and the Royal Navy's hydrographic survey force would have been really, really good and strong. I can't really blame this on Admiral Beatty, considering actually the survey ships mostly came into service a long time after Admiral Beatty left the service and actually left his mortal coil. However, I can blame very short-sighted defense reviews, which consider a peer-on-peer conflict to never going to happen again, and more complicated things like, can we get the civilian market to do it, or do we just need to look like we have the capability? We don't need to actually seriously have it because no one's a serious threat to us. Yeah. Anyway, Echo is a cute ship. As of May 2022, she's been put into low readiness reserve status, which is kind of sad and silly, especially as considering 2019 she did the Freedom Navigation maneuvers in support of Ukraine. And in December that year, she actually hosted the Defense Secretary at the time in Odessa. She took part in fishery protection duties while Mersey was deployed to the Caribbean in 2016, and they filled in a lot of things. But Echo herself took part in the search for Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 on special request of the Australian government. Carries, of course, a survey motorboat. Capable of a top speed of 15 knots, 9,300 nautical miles at 12 knots. Endurance is 35 days. And yeah, she's a good ship. Useful ship. And these are critical assets to producing the UK Admiralty charts, which are, how do I put this? The seabed and other features like to change regularly. There's a lot of forces at work down there and changing them, which means in order to keep them up to date for safety and accuracy, you have to do regular surveys of the same spots. And it's also why there are weekly notices to mariners, because there are changes on a weekly, sometimes daily basis. That's what these ships do. They try and find out the information so that we don't lose ships. They are, how do I put this? We talk a lot about the life saving measures put in for ships in terms of lifeboats, in terms of all the sort of the life preserving gear you get on ships. We talk a lot about that as saving lives. Oceanic surveys have saved more lives than all that equipment put together, because they provided information which has prevented disasters happening in the first place. Well maintained charts, well maintained informational data about currents, about the oceanic state in areas, especially areas of high risk, have prevented loss of ships on a far larger scale. It's prevention rather than the cure. Life saving measures are necessary. You always want lifeboats. You always want all those devices that, you always want the flotation devices, the things that will keep you alive, all the various spectrum of them, if you hit the water. But it's far better if you don't hit the water in the first place, and that's what these ships do. They find the rocks, they find the volcanoes which are coming up from the ocean, the ocean floor. They find where the seabed has changed. They find where the currents have changed. They find where all of Mother Nature's fury is gathering in the ocean, and they give us the information about it in a timely manner so we can make sure we are safe. That the people who move around the sea are safe, or as safe as we can make them in what is possibly the world's most hostile environment. So that's what they do. In war and in peace, they are critical assets. So, what is the least useful shipping commission right now in the Royal Navy? They don't have enough ships to have a least useful ship. You have to have a lot more ships before you can have a least useful ship. You could argue that HMS Victory doesn't put in much sea time these days, but she does a lot of other stuff for the Navy, so she makes up for it. So Enterprise is the active ship. Yep. Azowski. Polish Navy has currently 2 survey ships, Project A74. But both date to the early 80s and went through limited modernization. So yeah, give them a shout. Give a shout when you'll be getting rid of HMS Scott. 13,500 ton ship, that would be well over the needs of the Polish Navy. Mm-hmm. Nice everybody. I'm only 200 kilometers from the home base for the entire US Navy Strategic Nuclear Deterrence Fleet. I think I'd be able to say fungi-shaped clouds were things to get serious. Um, uh, Probably. Now, HMS Protector. I both love this ship and I'm not happy with it. Okay? And let me explain why I'm not happy with it. Okay, Endurance went and they decided they had to buy her. She is a Class 5 vessel. She can handle first-year ice up to half a meter thick. She was supposed to be the temporary replacement to Endurance, but instead became the permanent replacement to HMS Endurance. So you bought a less capable ship. Now, not only is she less capable in ice, still important, still useful, and capable enough for what we're using her for, but honestly not as capable as Endurance was, and so we can't push her that bit further. And she has already found the Dale-class oiler RFA Darkdale in James Bay, St. Helena. She isn't able to carry a helicopter. She has a flight deck for a helicopter to land, but she cannot carry her own hangar facilities. So if we go back to Endurance, had the capability of taking 2 links. Endurance, 2 links. Protector, 2 whirlwinds. Nothing. Nothing. And here's the thing. I'm supporting her crew. She embarks 3 PV-206 all-terrain vehicles. Number of quad bikes and activities for Antarctica, such as moving stores and equipment. But no helicopters. And yes, I actually go to the trouble of building the flight deck on the back and sorting out things to make sure she can sort of work for what the Royal Navy needs. And if you're going to build a flight deck on the back up to the level you need it for, the Royal Navy, it wasn't built to that level. They did sort of build it up. You'd think they, I don't know, build in a hangar. You could have built something on the ship. And I was told the other day, someone was talking. There was a naval officer talking to me and going, "Well, you can carry containers, and this is something we've got to sort of thinking about containerized capabilities." And I'm going, "Great, yes, you can carry containers. Can one of the containers be a crewed helicopter, please, for people movement?" Yes, I'd like her to carry UAVs. I don't think she needs necessarily to have 2 helicopters, but having 1 crewed helicopter that can move people backwards and forwards and be used for the various operations which they did use helicopters for a lot for operations in that would also increases the range of her reach. She can't go as far into the ice because she hasn't got a strong enough hull as Endurance had, and she doesn't have the same presence reach Endurance had because she doesn't carry helicopters. Let's be honest, 2 helicopters was a very useful asset. Bodie McBodie Face Primark 359 is not part of the Royal Navy. That's part of the Royal. She's the Royal Society science ship. Royal Society ship, and that's RSS Shackleton, and no, RSS David Attenborough. Boaty McBoatyface is one of the little boats on it. No, like amphibians without a hangar. Yeah, Albion and Bulwark do not have hangars. When Albion and Bulwark were being built, they had a hospital deck, a hospital, gym, suite, and a hangar, all built into their design for helicopters. And they found that if they deleted them, they could save a lot of money. So they deleted them, and then they get a very small hospital and a very small gym all crammed into the ship. Don't have all the space because they deleted an entire deck, and by deleting, they managed to make this possible, deleting that deck by also deleting the hangar. And so yeah, they had more flight deck space and everything. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant system because you wouldn't need them because you'd always be operating with HMS Ocean because she'd be retained in service. The idea was you would have basically Queen Elizabeth and Prince of Wales would come into service. They would replace, I think it was Ark Royal and Invincible, and then Illustrious and Ocean would stay in service as LPHs, and with the two LHDs, and that would be your amphibious force, but that didn't happen. Surprisingly enough. I don't know, because helicopters never go wrong. Well, the thing is, you taking two helicopters down there, yes, but I can honestly see you going right then. Well, I don't need to use the helicopter as much if I've got rotary UAVs. If I've got 3 or 4 rotary UAVs that are also going to do transport, etc., and that would be a good way to start them off, getting them into service and getting experience of them having rotary UAVs. Okay, Melanie, I will check Discord. No, that's funny, but not good. Sorry. Just answering the same question I keep answering about my book. Why didn't I put in RAN and RCN stuff? And it's because, thanks to COVID, I couldn't go to the archives, and I couldn't therefore do my own research, and didn't want to just base it off others. I thought that was always thought that was quite a principle stand to take, to go right then. I'm not going to make my book and make my name by just taking and rephrasing the research work of others. And it turns out that some people really find it annoying that I didn't. I know. But some people understand. Oh, nice. They're asking, was the name decided by some contest? If so, the British are yeah, that was that some gentlemen they had a and they the Royal Society had decided they would do something which would raise the profile. They'd have a fun competition to decide the naming of their ship, and they didn't think they thought they could rig it, and it ended up getting won by something called Boaty McBoatyface, and immediately they announced it wasn't going to run because they'd already ordered and basically decided that there was going to be David Attenborough, and they had rigged it so it should be David Attenborough, and it turned out the PR company wasn't very good at rigging things. Primark 3 don't the larger rotary UAVs that could actually replace ours still need a hangar? Yes, they do. So this is the thing. In nicest way, you still have the hangar space, which would actually be probably enough to take 2 crewed helicopters. But you would use one of those hangar bays for 3 rotary UAVs and one for a crewed helicopter. What killed the idea of HMS Ocean and HMS Illustrious paper carriers? Illustrious was getting long in the tooth, and the government didn't want to keep spending the money. So Ocean Illustrious was got rid of, and Ocean was sold off. Avzowski, so Bodie McBodyface is not some kind of character from a cartoon? Nope, it was entirely made up for the competition. And also, Protector actually took part in trying to help the international efforts to locate the missing submarine ARA San Juan when she went down. And in 2020, the crew from the ship were trained aboard a Canadian Coast Guard vessels in Arctic waters and renewed Arctic warfare waters. And also, they've done some cooperation at work with the Canadians in 2021. She's a useful ship, but as said, I would like her to have a hangar and helicopters. And someone turned around and went, but it's difficult. She's 5,000 tons. And I go, yes. And they go, well, she's not exactly the same design as we are. And I go, yes. And yeah, she's got a big crane on her and those things. But, yes, that will impact the amount of containers you can transport on her. Yes, you will have to do some redesigning of the ship. But yes, she's got enough space. You can actually do that. You could actually do some work on her. No, she didn't. Daratotsky on that one. And this is a Magpie, the newest addition to the fleet. 2018, and her role is literally to go around British ports and coastal waters and go, how deep are how deep are you? Can you take a carrier? And occasionally find very cool archaeology. She's good at that. She's very good at that. It could be. Was it Illustrious or was it Ark Royal? It could have been. No. Illustrious was supposed to be replaced at some point, but yeah, she was operated as one of the two. She was given a full refit and given a massive upgrade, etc., and systems done. She was considered the best option for it and was turned into a helicopter carrier. On the free. There are still a lot of World War II sea mines still around the floor as well that Magpie is also helping to hunt for and look for. Magpie looks like a water taxi. She does look cool. But let's be honest, Magpie's pretty darn cool in some of her stats. Magpie is 18 meters long, 6.2 meters beam, a 1.4 meter draft. She's capable of 23 knots, has a crew of 12, and displaces 37 tons, and goes out in seas where the waves are bigger than her. I mean, literally, go to Magpie's Wikipedia page. Please do this. Go to Magpie's Wikipedia page. You'll notice this is the top photo because, as usual, I'm doing my usual trick of if it's on Wikipedia, it's pretty much in public domain, and that means I'm allowed to use it. YouTube doesn't tend to make a fuss. Sometimes when I use pictures from other places that I've scrounged, they make a fuss, even if they're pictures I have permission to use, they make a fuss over it. Trust me, there's been some long patrols which have had to be completely redone because of it. But if you go to there, you will find there's a picture which is Magpie undergoing sea trials, which is very, very cool. And she, of course, was built by Atlas Electronic. Now, why is Atlas Electronic coming up? Because Atlas are this sort of marine systems people. And why is a catamaran from them interesting? Well, because if anyone is currently working on producing uncrewed ships for the Royal Navy, uncrewed ships for anyone in Europe, etc., it is the Atlas. And Atlas UK are producing the various modular surface vessels for the Royal Navy's workboats and the Akrams. Now, the multi-level sort of intelligence ships and the uncrewed ships. Basically, if you are looking at the future of uncrewed ships, are probably going to get to about this size, if not bigger. I had to say I did a lot of spent a lot of time at the Atlas stall at the NDL conference me and Drac went to, and we found them incredibly interesting, incredibly useful, and incredibly happy to share their stuff because they were happy to talk about and happy someone was talking about and wanted to listen and learn. Do I agree with all their ideas? No, I don't think they will all work, but I think some of their ideas sound like they could work, and I think more importantly, quite a few of their ideas sound like they have the potential for being evolved into ideas which could work. And they sound like they're getting there. Now, what's interesting is that if we consider they're getting up to 18-meter boats, they're building, and if we look at the Akrams, well, the currently optionally crewed, but could soon be completely uncrewed, they're also getting bigger and bigger. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's not a long time before they produce something which is magpie sized, if not bigger, because magpie is 18 meters, and is a sort of a fully ocean going uncrewed ship. That's different. So if Lost Jessica continues as a helicopter carrier, when does Losty finally require? Well, that was the point. The point was that Losty would continue. Then this was the original sort of one of the original plans going around. Okay, so the idea was you build Queen Elizabeth, Prince of Wales. And remember, their timeline for entry service is delayed because the government pays not to build them. And then you would start start an LHD program, which was sort of roughly being considered at this point. There are various. If you look in the early 1990s, the mid 1990s to early 2000s, lots of British LHD concepts going around for a reason. And then they would enter service, and the Royal Navy would get 2 to 3 of those, which would fill in the third carrier role and take over the Albion and Bulwark and replace Ocean. Probably would have ended up with 2 replacing Ocean, Illustrious, Albion, and Bulwark, so replacing 4 ships with 2. and then you end up you've got your 2 docks still in service, and you've got the equivalent of 4 flight decks in service. Let's take it around. How do we mass produce this ship for minesweeping? That depends. Why would you mass produce this ship for minesweeping when you could build a bigger ship which could launch smaller versions of this that do the minesweeping for you, which is basically what we're doing. Right. So, summary. Survey ships. It's the sort of thing you never realize how important it is until you don't have enough of them. They're the backstop for so many things we have. They are force enablers, and they are also national enablers in terms of true strategic needs like movement of goods, movement of supplies, the things we get up to, the things we count on for our day-to-day life. All these things the survey ships support. Historically, as said, specialist survey ships take a while to come in. Prior to that, they are just this. They're just converted ships with a lead line. Then in the 1940s, 1980s, they slowly start to bring in proper ships. Other than that, they're using ships which are basically anti-submarine warfare vessels repurposed for the task, and they're kind of interesting. And 1990s are when we truly have these vessels into service, truly capable ships. So yeah, they're useful. Hello, Hannah. Now, survey ships are fun, though. The technology in them is really, really cool and cutting edge. And I mean really cool and cutting edge. If ever any ship was going to get the sonar equivalent of laser LiDAR, it would be hydrography ships. They are also the closest thing we have to exploration ships these days, considering whilst the ocean does cover 70% of the Earth's surface, we know very little about it, comparatively. We are still learning a lot about it. We're still learning about what we do to it and what it does to us, and what its value is. So yeah, we need them. Nice. What are the odds the Echo class replacement will have an HMS Enterprise? I am currently wondering what we are going to replace Echo, Enterprise, and Scott with. I know there are talks about future survey ships. There is the multi-role ocean surveillance ship, which is planned to enter service in 2024 and is to be fitted with the advanced sensors and carry a number of remotely operated autonomous drones, the MROS. Now, I'm presuming this is supposed to be the replacement for Scott. However, as of October 2021, the ship had only entered concept and assessment phase. The ship will have a standard complement of approximately 15 personnel, and the ship will be primarily designed for survey duties and will be assisted with protection of the UK's undersea cables and energy supplies. That's all lovely. However, this vessel also is being talked about in conjunction with HMS Challenger, which was in the 1983 HMS Challenger, which was a specialist diving vessel commission, the diving vessel that took part in deep diving operations. And she was decommissioned in 1990, and she's to be replaced also by MROS. However, there is one thing you'll find interesting if you start looking around for the MROS, the multi-role ocean surveillance ship. And that is if you go to gov.uk and their discussions of it, and Ben Wallace's lovely statement about MROS, there is something missing. In all the discussions of MROS I have managed to find so far, no one has said who's building it or where it's being built. Well, it took them a while, but they found us. So, if anyone manages to find anything stuff about the MROS, I will be very glad to see it. And engaging strategy, if they're still watching, is probably frantically searching things and will completely correct me because I'm possibly wrong. But so far, there is not much data about who is actually going to build it. There's a lot of discussion about the government capabilities. The vessels will help protect critical national infrastructure such as undersea cables, which carry trillions of dollars of financial transfers each day and transmit 97% of the world's global communications. There's a bit more than that, but there you go. It's fun times. So we will see what happens. We will see what happens. But honestly, my hope is, whilst they are to have uncrewed ships as part of its assets, and certainly it should do, I am hoping that it will actually be more than a single ship procurement. That if maybe they decide they're going to combine the Scott, the Echo, and the Enterprise roles and procure 3 of them, which could be fine because you have 3 ships same. I'd hope that if they've got something which only requires 15 personnel to run it, myself, if that turns out to be the truth, I hope they decide, you know what, we can afford to run 3 or 4 of these ships. More, so you have 4 of them in service, so you can guarantee to have 1 at sea and 1 available. And if they're all doing the 300 days thing a year, because they're all managing that scenario, then that would give you 1,200 days a year to be playing with of operations, which is quite a big capability for oceanographic hydrography. We'll hope. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. If you've got any more questions, any general questions, I'll answer them for a few minutes. But yeah, as I said, this will probably end at about after 3.5 hours because, well, to be honest, I want to go get my dinner, which hasn't come out yet. It's supposed to come out at 10 o'clock. And I'm hungry. It always is a sort of standard thing. Am I hungry? Yes. Let's see. Ooh. Mm-hmm. So it's 3036. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Sage. Thank you, Dan Freeman, Paul from Chicago. Thank you, everyone who's been, and Sean. Thank you, everyone who's been adminning tonight. You've done a really great job. We only had one scenario where the the pernicious advertisers got through. Actually, Ferdinand, random question. Dr. Clarke, a relative has a pet chicken on a flower class corvette. How common was this? Quite common. Having pets on ships, especially chickens, etc., which could contribute extra fresh food, was quite common because you could feed a chicken on stale bread, etc. Not the most best diet in the world, but you could get eggs. And everyone likes fresh eggs. Hello, DG40. I was asking, have a lovely trip to Canada. Yes, this is going to be the last live before I go to Canada. Yeah, I'll be doing tomorrow night's World of Warships thing, and then I'm off to Canada on Thursday. So I will next see you live from Canada. Points. Thank you for all the time and effort you're putting in pre-Canada trip. It's a pleasure. I'm enjoying it, and I hope you enjoy the videos that come out. There are, as you can see, there is going to be a lot of them. There will be a lot of videos coming out while I'm in Canada. Basically, that entire second column, this column you can see here, is almost pretty much entirely Canada. Enjoy. I did mention HMS Hecate was pre her becoming a survey ship. Took part in the anti-slaving raids and did quite a good job. She sank a American brigantine. Hello, GD Harmon. I'm here. Late baseball. Are there in the modern survey ships good at spotting the various devices that various navies put at the bottom of the seas? HMS Scott is very, very good and has proved very, very useful for that role. I think at least one of the I think at least one of the last two Yamatos would have been called Shinano. And yeah, not a warship number 111 and warship number 797 we're not quite sure what they would have been called. There's a debate. But I do wonder if we consider what the rest are named for, if they had, they've named it for provinces, so presumably there would have been more provinces they'd have gone for, and I do wonder perhaps if they were planning on getting rid of some of their older battleships, so maybe Ise and Hugo would have been replaced. Maybe. What aircraft are you crossing the Atlantic on? Airbus. WestJet Airbus. Take care, Eric Salad. Thank you, Bugguy829. Thank you, Anouk. Thank you, Mr. Richards. Thank you, Paul Amos, Paul from Chicago. Nice to everyone. Hopefully, a time I can catch. Hopefully. Hello, Trisverdan, Callum Gasberg. As said, it should be a good Airbus. But as said, we are hoping at the beginning, we are hoping to do lives from the various ships, and you might even see over the next couple of days me practicing. There might suddenly be a boop. There's a live on Alex's channel, and that will be because I'm testing out the software. So I've done some initial tests, but I haven't done some full up tests yet. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. Take care, and thank you. And Anook, yes, Sosot's lines are still used, although they need a lot of work to repair them. Thank you, everyone.